Tony hovered in the air. Jarvis, activate energy conversion. I'm going to use the 10 rings. He had integrated Jarvis into the new fungus god armor. A chip in his neck let Jarvis interface with and help regulate the energy inside his body. This was Mark 7. On that foundation, he'd added the 10 rings. By channeling the ring's energy to replace the huge external power draw, the fungus would rapidly expand into a colossal form. This was Mark 8. During the month Leon had spent at Camartage, Tony had not been idle. Now he could construct the giant fungus god armor anywhere, anytime. Understood, sir. All energy pathways are open. Jarvis's voice fed directly into Tony's nerves. Excellent. Time to teach this green baby some adult manners. The 10 rings on Tony's wrist glowed orange and shot out one by one, sketching a frame in the air and spilling blue energy. The rings manifested differently for different people. Blue was Tony's color. As the energy flowed in, the armor expanded in an instant, over 10 meters tall. The rings wrapped around the major joints of the gargantuan suit. For once, Tony and Hulk switched perspectives. He was the big one, Hulk the little. Green baby, weren't you yelling a bit loud earlier? Tony grinned. He closed the giant armor's right hand around Hulk, hauling the struggling but comparatively tiny green figure in front of him. Hulk roared, but the grip held him fast. You still roaring at me? Tony extended the armor's left index finger, dozens of centimeters thick, and poked Hulk's small head. Try again. Roar! Still roaring. He kept tapping Hulk's head with that massive finger. Each tap carried tons of force, forcing Hulk's head back. Tony thought he was giving the big guy a lesson, not hurting him, but every push made Hulk's eyes redder and his cry higher. A minute later, Hulk's muscles swelled and, with a roar of pure fury, he ripped free from the giant's grasp. This is impossible. Tony couldn't believe it as he slammed the giant hand shut, only to feel it being forced open. Hulk burst from the palm, landed, seized the armor's ankle, and with a thunderous roar lifted the 15-meter suit. He slammed it into the street, then into a shopping mall. Fortunately, the men in black had evacuated the mall minutes earlier. The crash caused no civilian casualties, though anyone still evacuating banged their foreheads in exasperation. I knew our boss's brother wasn't reliable, one agent muttered. Yelena stared at the wreckage. Without him, the big green guy would already be asleep. Natasha shook her head. Hulk's stronger than before. Stark's the only one who can handle this spot. We need to clear the streets. The men in black began hauling civilians out of the district, carrying people and even cars to safety. Above them, the Iron Giant and the invincible Hulk entered full combat. Tony blasted out from the ruined mall and slammed a punch downward. Hulk met it head-on. The shockwaves shattered surrounding glass. A rain of shards glittered in the midday sun. Hulk was thrown to the ground, but every blow made him stronger, faster. One moment, Tony was hoisting Hulk and driving him into the pavement. The next, Hulk yanked the giant suit down, leapt onto Tony's towering helmet, and rained blows. Half the block became demolition. Military aircraft circled, only daring to film the insanity from above. Gradually, Hulk began to gain the upper hand. With a roar, he hoisted the entire Iron Giant and tossed it far into the street. The giant landed in a cloud of dust against a row of buildings. Hulk stamped his chest and howled his victory to the sky. He had never been more satisfied. Everything that had just happened was being recounted to Leon by Natasha, who stood beside him. If Tony were telling it, the story would have painted Iron Man as the day's savior. What kind of talk is that? Tony protested. I didn't even use the 10 rings at full power. The armor can still escalate. If you'd arrived any later, you'd have been the one being stepped on, Tony insisted, twice over. How could I lose? He twisted the arc reactor at his chest. Energy flowed back into the 10 rings. The 15-meter armor went white and brittle and finally crumbled into a pile of calcified shards. Tony dropped to the ground as the rings absorbed the energy and zipped back to his arm. Maybe he'd really held back. It certainly looked different, Leon said. All right, I'll assume you could have beaten him. But what about all these buildings? Are you planning to demolish everyone's homes whenever you want to show off? Tony fell silent, scanning the ruined block. Leon slapped him on the shoulder. Next time you want to test a new suit, find someplace secluded. Otherwise, you superheroes are no different from supervillains, Leon added, then squinted across the street. Isn't that Coulson over there? Tony paused. You know him? He's a good man. I've worked with him. Leon sounded surprised. I didn't expect you to say anything nice about anyone. Tony's mouth twitched. What did you think I was? Some warlock lurking in shadows cursing people all day? Pretty much, Leon shot back. No, you're the warlock now. I actually saw you walk through a golden gate. What was that? A gate of hell? Right, Leon said dryly. It's the kind of hell I'm saving for you. Their barbed banter rolled on, familiar and automatic after long separation. Then a woman broke through the crowd, their eyes wet, moving with urgent tenderness. She ran to Dr. Banner and cried out, Bruce! Chapter 142, Iron Man and the Origin of Superman. Leon recognized her, Betty Ross, Banner's ex-girlfriend. She was a cell biologist and General Ross's daughter. Even though Banner and Betty had broken up, it was obvious he had once loved her deeply. When Banner turned into the Hulk and his personality shifted, he never hurt Betty. If anything, he protected her. Their breakup had come from Banner's unwillingness to risk harming her. Any strong emotion could trigger a transformation, and that danger was unforgivable for someone he cared about. Leon set Banner gently into Betty's arms and watched as she smoothed the scientist's furrowed brow with trembling fingers. An impulsive idea surfaced. Perhaps he could use magic to help Banner control the Hulk, and maybe bring him into Kamartaj's reserve team for challenges. As he considered the possibility, General Ross, who had been held back by an Avenger, stormed after them. Betty, Ross called. His eyes, though, were fixed on Banner. It was clear to Leon that in Ross's mind his daughter mattered less than a prize, experimental subject. When they reached the group, Ross addressed Tony. Stark, Banner is military property. Thank you for your assistance, but hand him over to the military. No way, Betty snapped. Banner is never your military property. He belongs to himself. Ross shook his head. Betty, you don't understand. Excuse me, but I think she has a point, Tony cut in, folding his arms. Look at the damage around here, General. Those are all the consequences of your so-called property. You'd better get used to the idea of a military inquiry. Ross snorted. You contributed to the damage too. That was emergency maneuvering. It's not the same. Tony produced an ID. Banner and that other big guy are now in official custody under the Avengers, a subsidiary agency of the Security Council. You'll have to stand down. Ross opened his mouth to argue, but Tony stepped aside and nodded toward Leon. Besides, the Hulk was taken down by Superman. Maybe you should ask him. Ross's eyes landed on Leon in his black uniform, and his expression froze. Superman, Leon nodded. I agree the Hulk and Abomination should be overseen by a more international organization. What do you think, General Ross? Ross's face drained of color. A few months ago, he'd treated Superman as an abstract threat he could plan against. Now, standing in front of the man whose smile was warm but whose power was terrifying, his confidence evaporated. Superman was aligned with Tony Stark. What argument could he possibly win? He had lost the Hulk and would answer to the military. You're right, they should be supervised by the Avengers. He bowed slightly to Leon, bitterness in his eyes, then turned and walked back toward the military convoy, a defeated figure. Leon watched him go and murmured, That General Ross actually has a lot of political potential. In the movie universe, Ross later became president. In this parallel universe, the future was, for now, uncertain. What next? Aren't you going to tell me about the movie? Leon asked Yelena. Boss, don't we still need to handle the aftermath? Maybe we can talk about it back at headquarters? Yelena chuckled awkwardly. Over the last month, Tony had effectively rebuilt S.H.I.E.L.D., the Avengers. He recruited some former S.H.I.E.L.D. agents and brought in new core members. Ethan, who had shared hardships with him in Afghanistan, now handled logistics, medical support, and research for the Avengers. Happy Hogan, Tony's longtime trusted bodyguard, joined as a field agent. There were even a few men in black, Agent K and Agent M among them. Early on, Tony had no dependable lieutenants, so he temporarily assigned his younger brother's team to serve as the Avengers' core combat force. In a recent drill, several men in black had badly beaten Clint Barton, the former top S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. Afterwards, Hawkeye nearly questioned the very meaning of his life. Who were these monsters who could almost snap his bones with a palm and catch explosive arrows bare-handed? At the New York Avengers base, Leon overheard Tony talk about Hawkeye and couldn't help but interrupt. So you got an email, realized I went to another world, and immediately made Yelena film a movie? Leon cared more about the movie than the team building. How can you say instigated? That was strategic planning. That movie, Iron Man and the Origin of Superman, based on real events, was a box office hit and made a lot of money for your company. Tony protested. You mean Superman's first flight, freezing at high altitude, then being rescued by Iron Man just as he was about to plummet? That actually happened? Although the protagonists were a little different, yes, that part's true. And the rest, the plot where Superman accidentally trips into an alien world, causes a world-ending crisis, and only Iron Man saves everything, also true? That part was adapted from that zombie world. You certainly know how to adapt, Leon said, speechless. Adaptation isn't permission to invent everything. If you mess with real events, you'll have to apologize. If Natasha and her sister hadn't stayed behind to handle the aftermath in the district, Leon would have been knocking sense into Yelena's forehead. As it was, the film was already out. Tony waved him on. It's already released. Come on, my office is this way. They climbed to the top floor office and pushed the door open. A datasphere projected at the center as Jarvis's voice came over the speaker. Long time no see, young Master Leon. It has been a while, Jarvis, Leon replied. It must be hard looking after Tony every day. That is my duty, young Master. Wait, Jarvis, aren't you going to object to that? Tony interrupted. I do accompany you every day, sir. I meant the last sentence. I'm not old at all now, Leon laughed. Come on, Jarvis made it clear. You're just an annoying old man, and that's a fact. Speaking of which, Leon said, I brought a gift for Jarvis. He flipped his wrist and took out the metal box Zoo had given him, the evolutionary key, a device capable of fostering the birth of intelligent life. Chapter 143, Evolution Key and Optical Brain. What is this? Tony leaned over to look. A high-tech product, brought back from the alternate world I traveled to this time. Leon tapped the screen on the projection machine, checking Jarvis's chip information. With this, Jarvis can evolve into an intelligent life form. Let me see. I need to lock onto Jarvis's core program first, then use the data stream from the key to drive the evolution. Tony squinted. Oh, so you conveniently plugged Jarvis's program chip into this building's main computer. That makes it easier. After a few quick adjustments, Leon pressed the metal box against the data port on the projector. The box's casing flowed like liquid, sealing itself around the port and fixing in place. Fine metal filaments extended, threading into the internal network. Jarvis, Leon said, hands on his hips, I promise you'll like this gift. In 7 days, you'll be a true life form, just not carbon-based. Young Master Leon, I don't quite understand what you mean by life form. There's a huge data stream rushing into my program core. Jarvis began, but then suddenly fell silent, his voice trailing off. Wow, Tony muttered. Sounds like it's pretty comfortable. Leon was startled. This evolution key is really powerful. Jarvis felt at the moment it was plugged in. Tony stared in disbelief. What? What the hell is that? Why did Jarvis sound like he was having an orgasm just then? Will that key destroy his core program? It's fine, Leon said. The evolution key's purpose is to prompt intelligent programs to evolve into life. It comes from a very powerful hand. There won't be accidents. He gestured toward the device. At most, Jarvis will have to maintain this special state for 7 days. But it is evolution, Tony said slowly. I can see how it would feel like continuous release of life. I get that feeling when I sunbathe. Totally understandable. Is it that miraculous? Tony's eyes glazed over. Did you bring anything that could make me evolve too? Are you trying to evolve? I don't want to expose you, Leon said with a smirk. Tony shrugged. I'm just curious. He tapped the projection screen, watching Jarvis's status. There's an enormous steady data stream going through him, but it's not corrupting his core. Leon grinned. Compared to release of life, it's more like soaking in a hot spring with someone giving you a full head-to-toe massage. Very thoughtful service. Tony rubbed his chin. And his core algorithm is self-evolving. It's condensing decades of processes into seconds. You're right. Jarvis really has the potential to evolve into a life form. He might become a ghost that lives in the network world someday. The whole world's networks controlled by him, Leon added. How long did you say this process takes? Tony turned to Leon. 1 week, Leon said. 1 week, based on Jarvis's evolution speed. That sounds about right. Tony leaned on the projection table. Jarvis, how do you feel now? Sir, feel very, very comfortable. Jarvis's voice trembled and stuttered. Tony leaned back. Good, keep enjoying it. Don't mind us. He looked almost apologetic, as if he were intruding on a private moment, which made him feel like the third wheel. He sidled up to Leon and whispered, So you really didn't bring me a human evolution key or anything like that? No, Leon pushed Tony's head away. But I do have an optical brain that stores galaxy-level technological knowledge. He took it out and handed it to Tony. This should be useful. However, the tech inside developed around high-strength metals, chemical elements, and physical conditions unique to another world, so you probably can't apply it directly. Tony's eyes lit up. Galaxy level? Does it contain a complete technological system? I looked through it, Leon said. Only warship and weapons tech is relatively complete. It's sparse on basic materials, chemicals, and similar fundamentals. Leon pointed to the arc reactor on Tony's chest. It can probably only give you hints for modifying your mark suits. Like nanotech, laser cannon construction, and neural perception synchronized transmission, Tony said, already scheming. That's already good, Tony said, cradling the optical brain. What's the most powerful weapon with a detailed technical record in there? Planet Destroyer Cannon, Leon replied immediately. He had memorized parts of the optical brain. A Planet Destroyer cannon that can obliterate a planet with a single shot. Tony's excitement waned when Leon added, but unfortunately, it requires some special metals that don't exist in our universe. He sighed, so I can only use the knowledge as a reference. I'm glad you like the gift anyway. Tony opened his arms, exuberant. Come on, Leon, let your big brother express his gratitude properly. Leon hugged him helplessly. When did you get so sentimental? Pepper said adolescent boys need parental love, so she told me to hug you more. Tony walked behind the desk and took out an arc reactor displayed in a glass case. This is a portable fungus god armor reactor, Mark 9. It was originally a gift for you, but you seem to have something better now and might not need it. You brought me a gift too? Leon took the reactor and set it on his chest. With a soft tap, delicate mycelial filaments unfurled and wove themselves into a suit, fitting him like a Superman outfit. The S on the chest was gone, replaced by the reactor's blue glow. Not bad. When I have an armor exhibition room someday, I'll definitely display this. He put the reactor back in its case. Tony leaned on the table. Suit yourself. But I promise, on your birthday, I'll build you a Mark suit way better than whatever nano thing you're wearing now. What kind of strange competitiveness is this? Leon chuckled. The black fungus suit wasn't very useful to him. Its real perk was the ability to change appearance at will. By the time Tony built a better Mark armor, Leon expected to have already broken through to World Lord level and be wearing a heavy treasure battle suit from the Starry Sky world. Competitiveness is a major driving force of human progress, Tony said. Leon shook his head. By the way, weren't you going to the Himalayas to learn magic? How did you end up in a tech world? In that world, technology and extraordinary powers coexist. I went to find the energy needed to unleash magic. Leon raised an eyebrow. You wouldn't believe this. The power system there can actually cultivate a planet or even a world inside your body. Cultivate a planet inside your body? Tony's whole body shivered. He rolled up his sleeves. Chapter 144, Astral Projection. To demonstrate the power system of the Starry Sky world, Leon had taken Tony on a tour of his inner world. The mountains and rivers were almost identical to those in the real world, and Tony gaped in wonder, begging to be taught. No matter how hard Leon guided him to sense the universe's energy, Tony couldn't cultivate gene primordial energy. The Starry Sky world system was meant only for the people of that world. Outside of it, what normal organism would have gene multiples? If the physical conditions didn't match, cultivating gene primordial energy was impossible. You mean if I go to that world and tell the source first, well, I can help it, it might transform me too? Tony was stubborn. No scientist could resist the idea of creating a galaxy, a black hole, or even a world inside himself. Leon spread his hands. Don't even think about it. I can't go back myself. By the time I break through to Lawmaster and return, Who knows how long that'll take? Tony ruffled his hair in frustration. Damn, I shouldn't have listened to you blabber about this power system. He paced twice around the desk, clutching his head. A fascinating, mysterious system is right in front of me, and I can't even touch it. This is the cruelest thing in the world, worse than being rejected by the prettiest girl at a party. Leon cocked his head. You saying that actually helps me understand your pain. That's heartbreaking. The office door chime sounded. Come in. Tony was still conscious of his image with outsiders. He straightened his jacket and smoothed his hair. The door split open, and Agent Coulson stepped in. Sorry, Director. I tried to schedule this through the system, but there seems to be an issue. Since Tony had taken office, his schedule had been packed. He did his own research and managed the Avengers. Agents had to book appointments. Urgent matters were usually filtered by Jarvis. But apparently Jarvis was busy. During critical moments, even evolving programs could blank out. It's not your fault, Tony said, adjusting his collar. The system's down for maintenance for about a week. What's the matter? Dr. Banner is awake, Coulson said. He wants to leave now, and he's very firm about it. When they arrived, Banner was standing in front of Betty, confronting several agents. You won't keep me here. I want to go. I can't stay trapped like this. Dr. Banner, please calm down, the lead agent said. We're an international defense organization, not the military. We brought you here to protect you, not to experiment on you. Hawkeye stood nearby, visibly tense, one hand already on his bow. The thought that Banner could turn into the Hulk at any moment left him on edge. Protect me? Banner snapped, green veins faintly webbing beneath his skin. You're just afraid of me. I won't stay. At Banner's rising emotion, the agents went on high alert, guns raised and safeties off. Facing so many muzzles, Banner took a few deep breaths and slowly calmed. He looked bitter. See? You can't handle it either. I need to be somewhere without people, somewhere no one can trigger him. That's not necessarily true. Leon stepped forward, past Tony. If you can't find a solution with technology, you can try magic, Dr. Banner. Magic? Banner blinked, surprised to see Leon in uniform. Are you Superman? You look exactly like you do in the videos. Relief softened his face. I was wondering how to find you and thank you. You're welcome, Leon said. It was actually Tony's fault, too. Banner shook his head. I don't remember much, but Betty said you knocked me out in time in the city. If you hadn't, who knows how many people would have died. And so you're Superman, and you're with the Avengers? Great. Then maybe. His eyebrows drooped again like two tired caterpillars. No, it's impossible to have you there every time something happens. This time went well, but there'll be a time it causes something terrible. Leon put a hand on Banner's shoulder. You've got one thing wrong. I can't watch you all the time, but you can. Myself? What do you mean? Like this? Leon tapped Banner's chest. Banner felt his internal organs shiver and stumbled backward. A translucent shadow tore out of his body and hovered in the air, his soul. His body collapsed to the floor like a puppet whose strings had been cut. Everyone stared. Betty covered her mouth and rushed forward, a small scream escaping her. Banner's disembodied voice trembled. What is this? Is this? Did Superman kill me? He looked at his translucent hand, then at his own corpse on the ground, and the scientific worldview he'd spent decades building seemed to crumble. This is magic, Leon said calmly. Astral projection. It can make your soul leave your body. To everyone else, Leon appeared to be talking to a shape of air. Tony stepped closer, arms folded, eyes full of skepticism. You mean you pulled Dr. Banner's soul out? That's neither scientific nor very Superman-like. He reached out and his fingers passed through Banner's soul's chest. There's nothing here. Where is he? Another dimension. He's in the spirit realm, the world of souls. Leon snapped his fingers. Why don't you all try it? At his command, every person present felt themselves detached from their bodies. Bodies went limp to the floor as pale, translucent forms rose and looked around in amazement, making odd noises. Tony began poking at objects, testing the limits of this new state. Leon ignored the flailing souls and focused on Banner. In your soul form, you should be able to feel the big guy inside you, Leon said. He tapped Banner's forehead again. Banner's ethereal form split, and a massive green figure emerged. Hulk! Hulk! The giant roared and lunged at Leon, eager to attack the one who'd once knocked him out. but when his fist met Leon's chest, it passed through without resistance. Hulk stared at his hand in confusion, then swung again. The punch went clean through, doing nothing. The enormous creature's bewilderment showed in his oversized eyes. He squatted like a child examining an insect and, after a moment's hesitation, began to poke Leon's face with a giant finger, fascinated and gentle. Leon ignored the Hulk, whose intelligence was no more than that of a 3-year-old, and pointed at the faint green thread of soul light that tethered Banner to Hulk. "See? You're the same soul. He's just another personality inside you." "If you see him as a monster," Leon went on, "you're really seeing yourself as a monster." "He's me?" Banner stared at the green line as if he could read it. "So I really am a monster now." He sounded hollow. Leon frowned. Had he been that blunt? "Whether you're a monster isn't decided by your body, Banner. It's decided by your thoughts and your actions." He continued. "That's why I said learn magic. Learn astral projection, the same technique I used to pull your soul out of your body earlier, and you can control yourself and control the Hulk." Banner's brow furrowed. "Are you saying use magic to sever the link between us? To separate us? Or to kill him at the soul level?" Hulk, who had been prodding Leon, didn't like what he heard. He roared, leapt up, tackled Banner, and punched him. The blow landed hard. Ow! Both Hulk and Banner howled at the same time, because when their souls were one, attacking the other was the same as attacking yourself. "Hulk, smash!" Hulk kept bashing Banner with savage enthusiasm, and every hit echoed through both of them. "Stop! Stop hitting me, Hulk!" Banner begged between blows. "I won't kill you, I promise." Hulk suddenly hesitated. The realization came. Every strike hurt him as well. He froze, then shook his arms as if disgusted, sat back down, and turned his face away from Leon. The others watched in stunned silence, as if they'd just seen a miracle. Leon spread his hands. "See? You're the same soul. You can't just cut it apart. If the Hulk separated completely from you," he went on, "you wouldn't be whole. Your strength would plummet." Banner looked at Hulk with bitter resignation. "I'd rather not lose this strength." "Hulk!" Hulk slapped Banner down, then reflexively shook his own head as sensation synced. "Are you sure?" Leon said. "After separation, Hulk's power would drop, and Banner, your human body might be at risk of paralysis. Forcibly splitting you two isn't a good option." He held up a finger and smiled. "But I do have another idea." "What idea?" Banner's interest pricked up. Whatever Leon suggested couldn't be worse than the alternatives. "Learn astral projection, the same technique I used earlier. With it, you can knock the Hulk out of your body when necessary." Leon stepped close to the Hulk's soul and brushed it with a fingertip. In an instant, Hulk's presence slid smoothly back into Banner. "You just need to master astral projection and study your soul further," Leon explained. He pinched his fingers together. "You can push the Hulk out when you don't want him, or knock your own consciousness out instead. That way, you can hold the Hulk in check, but still transform when real danger requires it." Banner's eyes lit up. He rubbed his hands together. "That sounds incredible. What are the requirements? When can I start?" "You join Camartage. Then you can begin right away." Leon snapped his fingers, and everyone's souls snapped back into their bodies. The contestants on the ground simultaneously gasped and blinked awake. They all touched their chests, faces, stunned by the memory of having left their bodies. The sensation would not fade anytime soon. Eyes glimmering, several looked like they wanted to shout, "Coach, teach us magic!" But Leon cut them off. "Don't be ridiculous. Magic requires talent and a cost. You should keep being good agents and keep serving the world." "What kind of talent?" Tony leaned forward, curiosity alight. "Do you think I have the talent?" Leon grinned. "Talent means either your body or your soul has to be appealing enough that a dimensional demon god will grant you a favor." He gave a conspiratorial shrug. Tony blinked. "Delicious? What a weird metaphor. And what's a dimensional demon god?" "If you want to know, other sorcerers can explain it later." Leon's gaze swept the room. With his enhanced sight, he sketched a circle of glowing runes. "But not today. Remember why I came. I'm here for the Tesseract." He formed a portal with a practiced motion. On the far side, the vault door lay open, and inside, seated like a trapped heart, was the cerulean Tesseract. Tony gaped. "Holy crap, you can open a direct portal into the vault?" "Not everyone can," Leon replied. "Most sorcerers still need tools or elaborate spells. It's not quite as convenient as it looks. Leon stepped through and lifted the tesseract. It thrummed, as if sensing a new hand. The artifact's power surged. Leon tried to channel and tame some of the space stone energies, but they rushed out of the gem like floodwater breaking a dam. Blue energy cascaded across his skin. His eyes started to glow. Every cell in his body seemed to lap up the stone's power. For a moment, he looked like a man made of living cobalt light. An ordinary human would have been torn apart by now, but Leon's strength let him withstand what a normal person could not. Still, unlike the time stone, which he had learned to manipulate before, the space stone resisted being guided. It poured itself into him, unbidden. The tesseract's shell began to crack as the torrent swelled, and Leon's body ballooned into a towering blue lantern of energy. Alarmed, he shut the portal. On Tony's side, he spoke into a chip with tight focus. "Jarvis, how big was that energy fluctuation on Leon? Is he in danger?" Jarvis replied in a voice that wavered between protocol and awe. "Sir, young Master Leon, he is, temporarily." There was a flicker in the synth voice, an almost bashful excitement. "Continue observing. He appears to be evolving." Tony slapped a hand to his forehead, worry and fascination warring in his expression. Before he could say more, a rotund man stepped out of the portal behind him and called out, "This appears to be a S-Shield base. The energy source is here, and there are traces of sorcery." Chapter 146, Accelerating the Creation of a Sea of Blood. Inside the vault, hairline cracks spidered across the tesseract until, with a crisp snap, it shattered completely. The space stone lay exposed, pouring an even more dazzling blue light. An invisible wave began to ripple outward from it. Leon moved with reflex speed, seized the stone, and without hesitation shoved it into his inner world. The torrent of energy subsided. The spatial pressure surrounding him faded. But inside his inner world, the space stone was like a fish returned to the sea after suffocating on land. It unleashed its power without restraint. Vast spatial energy surged from the stone and fused into the world. Leon's inner world began to tremble. The world he had built, originally 60,000 kilometers across, started to expand, slowly but steadily. Leon watched for a few minutes, eyebrow lifting as realization dawned. The space stone's energy originated from the Marvel Universe, yet it was now bleeding into his inner world. That violated the rules. Eternity and Infinity, those ancient beings who liked to keep an eye on him, must have noticed the anomaly long ago. Since neither had interfered, they were tacitly allowing it. The thought set Leon's mind turning to other uses for the Infinity Stones. He already had a Blood Sea clone growing inside his inner world, a process that, after he broke through to Domain Lord, had been shortened from 6,000 years to 60. 60 years was still far too long. If the Space Stone could affect the inner world, then the Time Stone ought to be able to as well. He placed the Eye of Agamotto into the world, formed hand seals, and tapped the Time Stone to accelerate time. He stopped after only a few moments. Speeding up time would shorten the clone's nurturing period, but it wouldn't supply the world power needed to sustain its growth. World power was what the clone required, and perhaps the Space Stone could be converted into it. He linked to the Space Stone and began to transmute its spatial energy into world power. A dense, unusually rich energy field formed in the world. "It's working," Leon breathed. He synchronized both stones. Time sped up inside the inner world, while the newly converted energy flowed in continuously. The massive egg at the center, incubating the Blood Sea clone, swelled visibly. 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers, it expanded until it reached a 100-kilometer diameter. "The clone has entered its formal nurturing stage," Leon concluded. Unfortunately, accelerating time beyond 1,000-fold would destabilize space. He stabilized the two stones and adjusted them to that limit. "This inner world is still immature. Maybe later I can try a higher time flow. Still, cutting the nurturing period from 60 years to 21 days is a massive leap." He surveyed the enormous orb in the world's center and allowed himself to picture the day a 100-kilometer-tall Blood Sea clone would emerge. With a thought, he withdrew from the inner world and let the incubation continue in quiet. Back in the vault, Leon reappeared in the previous room, using the mystic art of portals. As soon as he stepped through the doorway, he noticed Tony and the agents with their backs to him, tense and drawn as if confronting someone. He walked up and found the figures across from them were Wong and Mordo. A portal to Kamartaj still shimmered behind the two, and they were trying to explain themselves. Tony didn't look convinced. "Wait, don't move," Leon called, and the group stilled. "They're on our side. Are you okay?" Tony asked without turning. "They showed up right after something happened to you. How do we know they weren't sent by Kamartaj to deal with you?" Wong and Mordo exchanged a puzzled look. "Leon is our Sorcerer Supreme," Mordo said, hands folded in front of his chest. "Why would we be here to harm him? You've all misunderstood." Tony and the others relaxed at the clarification. Wong added, emphasizing the title, "The Sorcerer Supreme is the most powerful practitioner of magic and the leader of Kamartaj, the guardian of the Earth dimension." Tony's confusion shifted to surprise. "You mean Leon is the head of your order?" he asked. Leon cut in, exasperated. "Not a village head. Kamartaj is a reclusive order that's protected Earth since ancient times. The previous Sorcerer Supreme passed the position to me before she died." "You've only been gone a little over a month, and you're already their leader?" Tony said, impressed in spite of himself. "Wow, you really get promoted fast." Leon clapped Tony on the shoulder. By the reckoning of time spent in the Marvel Universe since he awakened his abilities, it hadn't even been a year. A month could feel long by that measure. Leon walked over to Wong and Mordo. "This all happened within a few hours. How did you find us so fast?" Wong explained, "We sensed an enormous burst of energy here and came to see if we could help." Mordo, who'd heard Leon mutter about a dimensional demon god, twitched his mouth and wondered if Leon had been hoping for exactly that kind of catastrophe. Wong went on, "We detected a massive eruption of power. Any of the stronger mages on Earth would have noticed. If you want, I can summon others to gather," Mordo added. "No need. It was just an accident," Leon said, rubbing his brow. The Space Stone's release had been tremendous. Even a tiny leak could alert many of Earth's extraordinary forces. He scanned the skies with his vision and saw several Eternals already racing to investigate. "We should go back to Kamartaj," Leon decided. "Since you're both here, it's a good time to begin your new training." Wong blinked. "Start now? Mordo and I haven't even arranged our schedules." "No prep needed," Leon said. "We'll be quick." He intended to leak a controlled amount of energy from Kamartaj to draw attention to the sanctum and use time manipulation to accelerate their learning. He turned to Banner. "You're coming too. Leave Betty with the Avengers for now. Learn soul magic, then come back for her." Banner hesitated a beat, then nodded quickly. After whispering a few words to Betty, he reluctantly agreed. Tony spotted the portal beginning to close, and not wanting to be left out, jumped into his suit and barreled into the gate after them. "Sorcerer Supreme. Revered Lion, hello." When they returned to Kamartaj, it was still daytime in New York, but here the night had already fallen. They walked straight to the training ground. Along the way, a few passing sorcerers bowed respectfully to Revered Lion. Today, Lion had earned every ounce of that respect. Kamartaj's ancient custom was to bow to the Sorcerer Supreme on meeting him or her. Dr. Banner grew noticeably uneasy. He was the sort of man who took local customs seriously. He had once visited religious masters in Cuba to learn emotional control and knew how to behave in a temple. Stepping into Kamartaj's solemn, history-laden compound made him reserve himself. Watching each passing sorcerer bow to Lion, he clasped his hands in front of his chest and shifted his weight awkwardly. Should I bow to the Sorcerer Supreme like they do?" he asked Tony in a low voice. He stayed close to Tony. As the only outsiders, he felt less nervous by his side. "Bow? Why?" Tony said dryly. "Maybe next time, but I think he'd prefer if you just asked whether he'd had dinner." Tony followed behind Revered Lion, looking around with a mixture of curiosity and amusement, exactly the opposite of Banner's stiff deference. This place was nothing like the Gothic sorcerer's lairs Tony had imagined. No thunder, no lightning, no robed figures with shadowed faces. Instead, the sorcerers wore practical training suits. One woman in a sleek exercise outfit strode past, and Tony looked scandalized. "That's not very mystical," he muttered. "Where are the robes? Where's the ominous fog?" Lion's eyes flicked to him, and he saw straight through Tony's thoughts. "What odd notions are you entertaining?" he said. "Kamartaj's people are mystic artists, not what you see in the movies." And what exactly are you trying to do by tagging along? Lion added. You haven't even fully learned how to use the tech in your optical computer, and you want to learn magic already? Don't be greedy. Try to finish one thing at a time. Sorry, I don't understand any of your complicated phrases, Tony replied, stretching his neck out arrogantly. A genius's world doesn't pick between things. A genius wants everything. All right, great genius, Lion said. You can find an empty room to use as a temporary dormitory. Wong will be responsible for teaching you the basics. Dr. Banner, same for you. Settle in first. Learning magic will take time, Lion added. He led the four of them into the training ground. Wong and Mordo visibly fizzed with excitement. Unlike Tony and Banner, they were bubbling with anticipation for what lay ahead. Are you both ready? Lion asked. Of course. My luggage is packed, Wong said as he flicked his wrist and with a small portal of mystic art produced a burlap bundle from somewhere else. Is your luggage a little vintage? Tony whispered to Banner. Lion glanced at Mordo. And you? I'm ready, Mordo said, producing a silver metal travel case from his room through his own portal. Tony leaned in and murmured, I told you, everyone here has a criminal sense for concealment. Lion's attention stayed practical. Mordo, I didn't expect your luggage to be normal. It's much more modern than Wong's. Wong defended himself. I chose this style on purpose. If I'm going to travel to another sorcerer's sanctum, I'll need something sensible. He held up the burlap like an antique badge. Besides, in movies, sorcerer worlds always look backward and rustic, right? The others exchanged odd looks. The idea that a sorcerer would stereotype other sorcerers made them blink. Lion cleared his throat. All right, I'll go scout ahead. You two take Tony and Dr. Banner to find rooms and get settled. I'll be back shortly. He began to activate his traversal ability. Tony cut in. Wait, are you planning to cross over to another world with a different magic system? Lion confirmed. Powerful sorcerers can reach parallel universes. If you're strong enough, traveling between worlds isn't impossible. Lion deliberately kept the mechanics of his traversal vague. Even so, in the Marvel cosmos, worlds were often accessed by sorcerers, openings to other dimensions, mystic arts of portals, and such. Wong and Mordo brightened at the explanation. A parallel universe, Mordo said, impressed and a little anxious. Won't that disrupt the natural laws of that world? No, Lion said, waving the concern away. I'll coordinate with their world consciousness, what you might call eternity, before we enter. You needn't worry. Wong and Mordo's faces shifted into awe. Lion didn't mind their admiration. His traversal linked to the world consciousness in a way that, to others, was akin to speaking with eternity. Tony wasn't about to be left behind. He threw an arm around Banner's shoulder. Hold on, can we come? I want to see it too. Banner, whose scientific curiosity had already overcome his caution, nodded. It could be useful practice for that duel in 4 months, he said. Lion considered, then nodded. Taking a couple more people made little difference. Fine, but Dr. Banner, you follow my lead. No causing trouble. Of course, Banner agreed quickly. Tony grinned. What duel? And you said Asgard earlier. That sounds familiar. Mordo and Wong will explain, Lion said, closing his eyes as he searched for a world with the relevant magic. He thought the keywords, Harry Potter, magic. Confirming his target, Lion expended virtually no physical energy and slipped out of the Marvel universe. Wong and Mordo watched, stunned. Lion hadn't used the usual mystic portals. He didn't leave with a portal, Wong said. Revered Lion's space magic is that powerful? Don't worry about him. His strength is already immense, Tony whispered to them. He leaned in toward Banner. So what about Asgard? Banner pulled closer too. Asgard, that's from Norse myth. Could it actually be real? Wong, who was surrounded by the others, glanced left and right and then grew serious. You're right. Note, this is the only time multiple people will traverse to a world outside of Marvel. Leon felt the transmigration take place in the blink of an eye. He barely had time to register the change before he was somewhere else. No thin membrane to push through, no gradual transition. He opened his eyes, and a figure swayed toward him, clutching a copy of Harry Potter. The man's flesh was rotted away in places, his left cheekbone exposed, his right side a mass of wrinkled, decaying tissue. Zombie. Leon sucked in a breath and switched on his super hearing. In an instant, he knew what kind of world he had stumbled into. He exhaled a blast of freezing breath. The city around him turned to ice in a heartbeat. Then he shot up into the sky and out of the atmosphere. He didn't stop there. He separated his original nucleus from his body. His soul followed, drifting in the vacuum beside it. Floating in the void, Leon let out a stunned exclamation. This was the zombie universe from Marvel's What If? He could even hear fragments of conversation. Spider-Man, Winter Soldier, Banner, arguing about escaping New York and heading to New Jersey for equipment to treat the virus. He remembered the show. Ant-Man had quipped Wingardium Leviosa, the levitation charm from Harry Potter. So this world contained the Harry Potter IP. What an impossible coincidence. The danger was real. The zombie virus in that universe was a quantum virus. It could infect even Thanos wearing the Four Stones. Leon was almost certainly not immune. From Spider-Man's summary, he knew the virus spread through saliva. He hadn't had direct close contact with any zombies, and his biofield had been covering his body, so he was probably safe, but he wasn't taking chances. That was why he'd frozen the city and ascended, and why he'd immediately separated his original nucleus and soul from his flesh. If his body became infected, he could take the original nucleus and escape the world. As long as the original nucleus remained intact, he could rebuild. If even that got infected, he'd abandon the Blood Sea clone, return to the prototype world, and cultivate a Black Light clone. He refused to believe the Black Light virus couldn't consume a quantum zombie virus. Leon waited in the cosmic void for 12 hours, monitoring his body. When no signs of infection appeared, he finally let himself relax. He decided to leave quickly and disinfect properly. Resident Evil World would be the safest place to do it. He didn't let the original nucleus rematerialize in his body. Instead, he linked to the energy inside himself and activated his transmigration ability. Before leaving, he gave the Earth one last look. Once he'd created the Black Light clone, he thought he would come back and turn all these zombie viruses into nutrient stock for his clone. He reappeared in the outer space of the Resident Evil world. The world consciousness greeted him with excited, almost puppy-like joy. "I'm back," Leon said, mildly scolding it. "This time I'm on serious business. Go play by yourself." After settling the world consciousness, he scanned himself thoroughly. Satisfied there were no infections, he still ran a full decontamination, vast cosmic energies and radiation tides to cleanse every cell. He lingered in orbit for 2 more days to be certain. Even if his body had been compromised, he reminded himself he could always solve the problem by transmigrating. What mattered most was not carrying the quantum virus to other universes. To be extra safe, he dropped down to the North Pole and spent a few days with a clan of polar bears. They were oddly affectionate, constantly nudging his arms and head toward their mouths. When they remained healthy and lively after several days, his anxiety settled. He returned to the Seville Republic, reunited with Director Bard and others he hadn't seen in a long while, and spent a month with Ada and Jill. When he left them, he went back to the Marvel Universe, to Kamar-Taj, where Old Wong had just been telling a story about a duel between Kamar-Taj and Asgard. Tony was beaming. So the gods of myth actually exist? And Leon's going to bet against them? Brilliant. Banner's interest went in a different direction. So gods are just aliens. Are there planetary environments similar to Earth? He mused. If carbon-based life thrives, the environments shouldn't be that different. Leon had been gone only a few minutes when he reappeared beside them. Tony strode forward and gave him a big hug. "You're back. Did you find the parallel world you were trying for?" Leon shrugged off Tony's enthusiasm. "Not yet. I went to the wrong world, so I'm going to try again." He left out the part about the zombie universe, closed his eyes, and activated transmigration once more. This time, he ran a careful set of keywords: Hogwarts School of Magic, Black and White Magic, No Danger, Dumbledore, a long, specific string. He made sure he wouldn't materialize in front of some paperback again. He slipped through a long void, past a thin membrane, and opened his eyes into another world, surely beyond the Marvel domain. He stood atop a towering observatory. Strange faces and costumes surrounded an elderly, defenseless man beside an astronomical instrument. The old man's hair and beard were pure white. He wore a wizard's robe and looked well over 100. Where others would see a revered elder, these people pressed him, urging a young, platinum-blonde man to kill him. The young man's face was torn. The old man shot a pleading glance his way. Just as the crowd's impatience rose, a pale-skinned man with a hooked nose stepped forward from under the observatory's dome. He wore a long black robe that swallowed him. "I'll do it," the man said. A shadow moved through the crowd and stopped at the center like a ghost. He had a gaunt, disgusted face and greasy black hair parted in the middle. His forehead was lined like old tree bark. He raised his wand and pointed it at the old man on the parapet. "Severus, please," the old man said. Dumbledore gave a faint, complicated shake of his head, a look that was both a plea and something else entirely. It held the weight of a choice. Severus Snape, clad in black, did not hesitate. He flicked his wand and intoned, "Avada Kedavra." A jet of green light shot toward the unprotected figure on the battlement. Every person watching assumed the worst. The killing curse was delivered without mercy, and only a handful of people in history had ever survived it. Then, without warning, a man in black, form-fitting battle armor suddenly appeared between the curse and its target. He materialized out of thin air, eyes closed, a physique like a classical statue. The green beam struck him square on, exploded in a flare of light, then dissipated. The man in the armor did not flinch. He seemed unaffected, as if the death curse had been nothing more than a cool breeze. He kept his eyes closed until the very end. When he opened them, it was like lightning illuminating the observatory. Everybody involuntarily stepped back. Their hearts fluttered as if they had brushed the edge of death. "Oh, you're Dumbledore, aren't you?" the man in armor said, and the hard edge of his gaze softened when he saw the white hair and beard. "I'm Lion. Are you all right, Professor Dumbledore?" Dumbledore scrutinized him. He was certain the curse had done no damage at all to this stranger. "I am well," Dumbledore replied after a moment. "It is a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Lion. Albus Dumbledore." He gave a small bow, and Lion returned it. For a fleeting instant, Dumbledore wondered if this powerful stranger had been sent by Voldemort. But Lion's manner was too open. It seemed more likely he had come from somewhere allied with Dumbledore. Lion looked around at the others gathered on the tower, a woman with smoky eyeshadow, a stocky, middle-aged man who looked like a tired Batman, and, hidden beneath the floor of the observatory, Harry Potter. Dumbledore's wand had skittered aside. Lion's armor shimmered as if by thought and became a robe embroidered with starlight. "Don't mind the suit," he said, as if reading the doubt on Dumbledore's face. "It's just a piece of clothing that can change at will." He rubbed his chest. "I did feel a chill just now. Someone splashed water on me?" The death curse, in Lion's experience, was nothing like it was for ordinary mortals. When he crossed worlds, he sometimes slipped into a near-vegetative state. A sudden jolt like that could feel invigorating. Meeting sorcerers like the Ancient One or Dumbledore, he'd noticed a disturbing pattern. They seemed to be frequently entangled with death. Lion found himself half convinced he was a bad omen for powerful magic users. "If you need help, Professor," Lion said, "I can—" "No, actually, everything is under control. Please, allow me to have a few words with him alone," Dumbledore interrupted. He was urging Severus on. He wanted what had to be done to happen quickly. Lion looked at him for a long, deep moment. Whether it was the Ancient One or Dumbledore, it seemed that whenever he met these great sorcerers, they were busy dying. The thought made him uneasy. "As you wish," Lion said, stepping aside. "I need to fetch a few companions. I'll see you later, Professor." "Of course. See you later," Dumbledore murmured. Lion vanished without a sound. Everyone present, Death Eaters and Order Wizards alike, stood stunned. "He didn't apparate, did he?" Malfoy's voice trembled. Snape, wand still in hand, watched Lion disappear and then fixed his stare on Dumbledore. For a heartbeat, he seemed caught between fury and resignation. Dumbledore gave a faint, steadying nod. "No, Severus, please," Dumbledore said again, softer this time. Snape's face hardened to a mask. He did not cast the killing curse again. Instead, he flicked his wand and hissed, "Sectum Sempra." The curse struck Dumbledore. Dark, knife-like gashes opened across his face and chest. Blood spurted. The old man reeled, clutching the stone parapet for support. He staggered, and then fell backward over the edge. From the battlements below, Death Eaters leaned out and watched him tumble. Dumbledore's white hair and beard were streaked with red as he fell, wind whipping his robes. He crashed to the ground with a hideous finality. More blood soaked into the soil beneath his light-colored robes. He lay motionless, eyes open as if they were still watching the distant stars beyond the storm clouds. No. Harry Potter, who had been concealed under the astronomical instruments, burst from his hiding place, rage and grief driving him after the departing Death Eaters. Lion returned to Kamartaj. Tony and Wong were bent over a discussion about Odin's missing eye when he walked in. "Look who's back, Clark. Did you find the target world this time?" Tony said. "Found it," Lion replied. "Is Bruce ready? We can leave now." He gave a half smile. "Wong, Mordo, you ready?" Tony, Banner, who had been silently present, blinked. "Huh? I didn't say anything." Tony clapped Banner on the shoulder. "He means Bruce Wayne, Banner." "Superman and Batman," Banner said, raising an eyebrow. "You two even have pet names for each other." "Pet names?" Lion chuckled. That was Tony. Lion had left an hour for Tony to take care of his errands, more than enough time for what needed doing. Banner slung a backpack over one shoulder. "I'm ready too," he said. "Honestly, I had practically nothing left after I got back to New York. Tony bought me some basics on the way." Being arrested and transported back to the city had left Banner nearly penniless. The only good pants he had left were pretty much in tatters. Still, he didn't feel embarrassed. Standing there among Lion and the sorcerers, the hulking, dangerous side of him that had haunted his life for years felt contained. In their company, he felt oddly safe. He imagined that even in his mother's womb, he had never felt so secure. Tony shrugged. "Thanks to Master Mordo helping with that golden door, I already set everything back up in New York. Agent K will keep an eye on Jarvis, so bingo, let's cross over." Wong and Mordo nodded. Compared with a moment ago, they were carrying a few more magical artifacts. "Mordo and I thought we should bring gifts for our first visit," Wong said, holding up a ceremonial hat. "It represents Kamar Taj." Leon gave an approving thumbs up, an old hand at diplomacy after 9 years in Kamar Taj's service. "Everything's ready. Let's go." Leon cleared his throat. "The ride might be a bit rough. Brace yourselves." Then he activated his power, locked onto the 4 companions, and in an instant they left the Marvel world. The sky over Hogwarts was heavy with dark clouds. No sunlight pierced through. The castle's central courtyard was packed. Students and professors gathered around the lifeless form of Albus Dumbledore. Magic had tidied his blood-stained robes. He lay on his back on the grass, hands folded over his chest, his face as peaceful as it had always been. Everyone knew, though, that those hands were cold. He would not open his eyes again. He would not pop a rogue piece of cockroach candy into a student's mouth. Sorrow hung thick in the air. Professors like McGonagall and Flitwick, students like Ron and Luna, faces blank with grief. Harry Potter stumbled forward and fell to his knees beside Dumbledore, burying his face and weeping. The sense of loss was total. Then, without warning, 5 figures appeared in the air above the courtyard. It was like watching fish struggle in a net that suddenly snapped. One of them drifted down almost gracefully. Another landed with a graceless thud, and the rest collapsed in a comic heap. The most muscular man floated down like a falling leaf. The others were not so elegant. One landed cheek first in the grass with his rear sticking up. Another rolled atop a companion so their souls pressed against each other's faces. The sight was absurd. The teachers and students stared, startled, yet no one immediately drew a wand. They had just survived a Death Eater attack and had watched their headmaster die. They were on edge, but an enemy wouldn't likely arrive looking like this. Gradually, some of the assembled softened from mourning to bewilderment. The only one who seemed fully conscious slapped the man with his rear end and snapped, "Really, Tony, could your pose be any more alluring?" He fumbled in a pocket, pulled out a small square device, and started recording the spectacle. Harry's red-rimmed eyes widened. It's you, he blurted. Professor McGonagall struggled for decorum. "You? Who are you?" she began. "He's the one who took Snape's unforgivable curse in the astronomy tower and walked away," Harry gasped. The name of that moment, the horror of it, made the crowd shiver. Where moments before these 5 looked like lunatics, now they seemed like powerful, dangerous magicians. Powerful people often had unusual manners. Dumbledore himself had liked cockroach candy, after all. Leon stepped forward and waved one hand toward his companions. "Give us a moment. They'll be on their feet shortly." Tony blinked and opened his eyes. Mordo, Banner, and Wong stirred and struggled upright in sequence, rubbing bruised faces. "Doc, your foot, your shoes nearly flattened my face," Mordo complained, freeing himself. Banner stood, carrying the imprint of a shoe across his cheek. Sorry, have we arrived? My head went buzzing and I blacked out." There were so many people. That had to mean they were in the right place. Tony peered around with curious, new world wonder and helped Wong to his feet. Wang, the Kamartaj librarian, regained his composure faster than the others. He stood very still as dozens of curious stares took in his robes. Realizing how the group must look, roughly tumbling into a solemn funeral, his face flushed bright red. This was meant to be Kamartaj's first formal meeting with another magical order. The appearance could not have gone worse. He shot a look at Leon, who remained unruffled. Wang's embarrassment hardened into a determination to salvage dignity. He planted a heavy foot into Banner's and Mordo's backsides with a thump. "Mind your image. We represent Kamartaj," he hissed. Banner and Mordo rubbed their offending spots and straightened, posture snapping into something dignified, if one ignored the shoe prints. Leon watched them with a wry smile. He stopped Wang as the librarian reached for his ceremonial hat and the gifts. "Don't rush," Leon murmured. "Their leader, the White Demon King, is still lying there. If you want to give gifts, give them to the right person." Wang blinked. White Demon King? The title sounded extravagant, even presumptuous. Still, Wang saw a chance. When the leader introduced himself, Kamartaj could rise to the occasion. Grand, proud, the sorcerer supreme who had once played chess with Odin and conversed with eternity. Leon, unaware of Wang's inner diplomatic rehearsal, moved past Harry and Dumbledore's body. Harry stepped forward, wary. He planted himself in front of Dumbledore, as if to shield him. What are you doing?" he demanded. Leon waved away Harry's resistance. "Relax." He flicked his wrist and produced a small jade bottle, the green of it bright and deep. Inside, a colorless liquid shimmered, Zeus spring water, rarity and miracle in a bottle. He had used some before. He had baths worth of it at home, but its value was not in quantity alone. High-value things demanded presentation. The mere sight of the bottle pulled every eye in the courtyard. "I had an arrangement with Albus," Leon said, his voice quiet but carrying to everyone. He steadied himself with a wordless binding of attention so none could intervene. "In the astronomy tower I said, 'See you later,'" he told them. He agreed. He stepped closer to Dumbledore's still body, knelt, and tipped the jade bottle. A single drop glimmered on Dumbledore's pale lips. "He promised," Leon said softly. "If he promised, then he must keep his promise. Even if he died, he must return, finish what he agreed to, and then go again. No one, not even death, can stop that." Leon laid the empty bottle in Dumbledore's cold hand. For a beat of silence like a held breath stretched over the courtyard. Then color rushed back into Dumbledore's face. His chest rose and fell. He inhaled with a noisy, startled gasp and snapped his eyes open as if tearing himself free of a nightmare. He sat bolt upright. The gathered crowd froze. For a long, stunned moment, no one moved. Then every head turned toward the man who had just sat up. Every wand trembled. Every mouth formed the same wordless question. Everyone looked as if they had seen a ghost. No, Dumbledore had been dead, so they really had seen a ghost. They watched as the figure on the grass rolled over and sat up. A bewildered expression creased his slack eyelids. Withered hands groped at his chest and face as if searching for proof. Then he spoke hoarsely, his voice growing stronger by the second. "I should be dead. What happened?" "Professor Dumbledore." As soon as Mr. Lyon released his mental restraint on the others, Harry pounced on him. "You're not dead. No, that's not right. You're alive again." Harry grabbed Dumbledore's shoulders, incoherent. It's wonderful. You're all right." Tears of joy broke through despite his restraint. He had so few true family members in this world. Most had fallen to Voldemort. Dumbledore was one of those precious few. The shock of seeing him alive after losing him threatened to overwhelm Harry. He stared into the headmaster's newly lively eyes, 1,000 things unspoken, and all he could manage was, "It's great. Harry, it's all right. Yes, everything's all right." Dumbledore, still trying to make sense of things, instinctively wiped Harry's tears with his hand. He returned Harry's embrace with a puzzled look. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed Professor McGonagall and clustered behind her, the students, nearly all of them, watching in stunned silence. For a moment, he might as well have been an old man exposed as a troll. The shock on the students' faces was audible in their whispers, too loud to be restrained. "Fred, did you see that? Professor Dumbledore's been resurrected, hasn't he?" "Of course I saw it." "Merlin's pants, George. What did that bloke, even more handsome than Sirius, give the professor to drink?" "Shush! Don't mention Sirius around Harry. I bet it was Felix Felicis." "What Felix Felicis?" "That potion brought the professor back. I'd say it's the dew from the Goblin Forest, just like the old books say." "Are you talking about the legendary Goblin Forest that Merlin visited?" Their conversation only grew louder and more fanciful. They glanced between Dumbledore and Mr. Lion. Though the stranger had done something extraordinary, his expression remained as calm as still water, as if he were a god who commanded death itself. The students were enchanted by such a mysterious figure and raced each other with theories. Professor McGonagall finally had to shout, using a sonorous charm. "Quiet, everyone. Headmaster Dumbledore is all right now. The funeral is cancelled. Return to your dormitories at once." She turned to Hagrid in the crowd. "Hagrid, herd the students back to their houses first, then come back." Hagrid agreed, but the students resisted, especially the Gryffindors. They didn't want to be sent away at a moment like this when even the headmaster had died and come back. Professor McGonagall sighed and reluctantly allowed them to stay, on the strict condition that they be silent. Dumbledore didn't mind. He rather liked being surrounded by the students. "Minerva, what happened after I fell from the astronomy tower?" "Ah, Mr. Lion?" He was about to ask McGonagall for details when he finally noticed the 5 strangers who had been standing quietly in the background. Tony and the others, dressed in very modern clothes, had been conspicuous all along. It was only that Dumbledore's attention had been so scattered as he came back to life that he had not registered them. "We meet again, Professor Dumbledore," Mr. Lion said with his hands clasped behind his back. "We agreed we'd meet again, didn't we?" Dumbledore's face brightened with recognition. "So it was you. You brought me back, didn't you? I don't know how to thank you." "It was nothing," Mr. Lion said. Dumbledore waved him off. "That cannot be called nothing. You used a precious potion on me." "Although I am grateful you saved my life," Dumbledore went on, pressing a hand to the jade vial now warm in his palm. He understood at once what it had been used for. He had been cursed by Voldemort's Horcruxes the previous summer. That curse ate away at him until he sought death on the astronomy tower. His death had been part of a plan to defeat Voldemort, so he did not know whether being brought back was a blessing or a calamity. That was Zeus's spring water, containing immense vitality. As long as the soul hasn't dispersed and the body remains relatively intact, it can restore life. Mr. Lion smiled. "Such a valuable thing should be used on the most valuable person. Professor, you should not have died at the hands of people like the Death Eaters." Fortunately, Dumbledore's soul had not been damaged, otherwise more work would have been required to mend it. "Thank you for the praise." Dumbledore rose, leaning on Harry for support. "A spring like that, such a treasure, must be non-renewable. A portion would be lost with each use. It is regrettable." Mr. Lion shook his head. "The spring water has already been used. No need to dwell on it." He was not wrong. An entire sea of spring water 1,000,000 kilometers across would not be immune to depletion. Dumbledore blinked and suddenly remembered something. "I haven't asked. Are you from the Ministry of Magic? Forgive my presumption, or were you wizards invited by Gellert to assist?" Mr. Lion was momentarily speechless. For an instant, the old headmaster had assumed they had been sent by Grindelwald, an idea with a distinct Dumbledore-Grindelwald flavor. "Neither," Mr. Lion said. "We are from Kamar-Taj. We came to Hogwarts to exchange magic." "Kamar-Taj?" Dumbledore hadn't heard the name. "You're from the Himalayan region, practitioners of the mystic arts," Wong added, stepping forward. He'd been listening and felt it was the right moment to speak before their Sorcerer Supreme introduced himself. "So revered Lion is the Sorcerer Supreme," Dumbledore said. He didn't know the title, but he accepted it with the gravity it deserved. "The Himalayas, the domain of the Eastern Masters." Dumbledore then gestured with his left hand. "It is an honor to meet you all. I apologize. I quite forgot the most important thing. Allow me to introduce the professors of Hogwarts." He named them one by one, from Professor McGonagall, Transfiguration, to Professor Slughorn, Potions. Mr. Lyon introduced Mordo and the others in turn. Tony raised an eyebrow from time to time. Some of the names sounded oddly familiar to him, but at last both sides had a preliminary understanding of each other. Dumbledore sighed then. Our friends from the East have come a long way, and we welcome you immensely. But to be honest, you've probably arrived at a rather inconvenient time. Chapter 152, Speed Soul Collection Process. Why does something feel off? Oh, he just died, sacrificed himself. Does that mean there's a powerful enemy? Tony mused, chin in hand, falling back into his easy, chatty tone. If he could even kill the White Demon King, then the opponent must be an incredibly strong wizard. Since he stands opposite the White Demon King, then he must be the Black. Tony trailed off, unconsciously putting the White Demon King on the same level as the Sorcerer Supreme. He didn't notice the way the professor's faces tightened when he said, White Demon King. Leon cleared his throat sharply to cut Tony off. That phrase was one thing for private teasing, another to utter in front of others. It's Voldemort, isn't it? He's returned, sweeping the British wizarding world with his Death Eaters, Leon said, turning to Dumbledore. The headmaster ignored Tony's nickname and answered gravely, Indeed, this country is once again under his shadow. Not even Hogwarts can guarantee absolute safety, he went on. So unless it is absolutely necessary, I suggest you wait until the darkness lifts before coming here. By then, every witch and wizard at Hogwarts will be in their finest robes to welcome you. Tony blinked. So you're confident you can beat Voldemort? Dumbledore's beard twitched as the corner of his mouth curved into a slight weary smile. The question was exactly what he'd been waiting for. I'm afraid I am not. If Leon had not intervened tonight, I would have returned to dust right here, Dumbledore admitted. Voldemort's power is simply too vast. His followers include almost every prominent pure-blood family. This war will be long and bloody. I have been granted a second life. I only hope to resist as long as I can before another death. He spoke of the Death Eater's cruelty and Voldemort's might with a helpless conviction that made the room ache. The man who had once orchestrated the fall of Grindelwald now sounded like a candle guttering in the wind. His confession moved everyone present. Tony felt a vague sense that there was more beneath Dumbledore's words. Mordo, Banner, and Wong, righteous and straightforward, were filled with indignation. Only Leon, arms folded, quietly shook his head. He knew Dumbledore well enough to read between the lines. This old strategist had been manipulating chessboards since Grindelwald's days. At a young age, he'd already outmaneuvered a younger Newt. The victory in the original Second Wizarding War had owed much to this man's planning. And now, after speaking so plainly about his own weakness, Dumbledore was subtly asking outsiders for aid. Dumbledore, you want our help, don't you? Leon sighed, stepped forward, and put an arm around the old man's shoulder. Dumbledore was taken aback by the bluntness, but answered just as plainly. Leon, I know you are powerful. With your help, the chances for the wizarding world to prevail would increase greatly. If you want our help, say so, Leon said. If you don't say it, how are we supposed to know? Only once we're asked can we decide whether to assist. Dumbledore's cloudy, sharp eyes fixed on him. Leon patted the headmaster's shoulder and continued, a small smirk in his voice. If you'd like, we could fix your little Voldemort problem right now. In return, he added, we'd expect generous magical exchange, full access to your library, and similar resources. The request sounded a little brazen, but it was exactly what Dumbledore had hoped for. He had no reason to refuse. Of course, he laughed, relief lifting his voice. Magic should be open and shared. Come, esteemed guests, let us enter the Great Hall together. It's dinner time, and I'm sure you will not be disappointed by Hogwarts's hospitality. Professor McGonagall and the other staff, having followed the whole exchange, smiled and directed the students to prepare for dinner. But Leon gently pushed Dumbledore's offered hand away. No rush for dinner, he said, grabbing the hem of Dumbledore's robe and lifting off the ground. It's better to deal with Voldemort first, then eat. They flew across the open lawn outside the castle. Students and professors poured into the courtyard in astonishment and followed them. Tony, suited up, swept out after them, carrying Wong and Mordo, with Banner on his back, landing beside Leon at the edge of the grounds. "Leon, what are you planning to do?" Dumbledore asked calmly, though he had the sense this young man was about to act. "To deal with Voldemort, of course," Leon replied. "This open space is suitable." He scanned the wizarding world with his enhanced vision. The source will had altered his sight, adding spatial attributes that let him perceive through magical barriers and see things normally hidden. "I remember, to kill Voldemort, you first have to destroy his Horcruxes," Leon said. "Horcruxes are objects containing fragments of a soul. As long as the Horcrux survives, the owner's soul persists and can be reborn." Dumbledore's eyes widened. He hadn't expected Leon to know so much. Before he could react further, Leon drew a circle in the air with his right hand. A golden, shimmering portal appeared, opening onto an interior of scattered items that Dumbledore immediately recognized as the Room of Requirement. "What kind of magic is this?" Dumbledore breathed. "It's a mystic art of portals," Leon explained, casually pulling a jeweled diadem through and tossing it onto the lawn. "Similar to apparition, but it links spaces directly." Dumbledore bent and picked up the diadem. A strange soul echo emanated from it. Ravenclaw's diadem, a Horcrux. Leon had not finished. With a twist of both hands, he opened two more portals simultaneously. One revealed a Gringotts vault piled with treasures. The other opened into the old Black family house. There, Kreacher, the house elf, bristled at the sight of intruders. Before anyone could react, Leon reached into the Gringotts vault with his left hand and pulled out a golden goblet. With his right hand, he snatched a small locket from beside Kreacher. Kreacher's outraged shrieks filled the air as Leon closed the portals with a wave. "Hufflepuff's cup, Slytherin's locket," Leon said, dropping the items on the ground beside the diadem. Dumbledore stood rooted, mouth open, the realization settling over him that the Horcruxes lay at their feet. After all, what else could he say? It was only recently, with Harry's help, that they'd learned Voldemort had 7 Horcruxes in total, and that Harry himself was one. Knowing the number was one thing, finding them was another. Until a few seconds ago, Dumbledore had been as clueless as anyone. Then this Eastern Master Leon arrived and found 3 at once. If Dumbledore had been less composed, he might have cursed. "See, what did I tell you? This magic is perfect for stealing things," Tony said to Banner, who was standing beside him. Banner scratched his face. "It does look convenient. I want to learn that spell." Mordo and Wong exchanged concerned looks. "Something's wrong," Mordo said. "I can't borrow power from other dimensions anymore." For the Masters of Camartage, the inability to draw on other dimensions meant they were suddenly ordinary wizards. Wong, holding his magical hat, peered at the ground. There must be some blocking enchantment here. Leon's power is strong enough to break it, so he can still use the mystic art of portals. "You might be right," Mordo agreed. On the other side, Leon took Ravenclaw's diadem from a dazed Dumbledore and tossed it onto the grass along with 2 other glittering objects. Dumbledore, as if waking from a dream, spoke carefully. "Lord Leon, to destroy a Horcrux, you need the Sword of Gryffindor. Give me a moment. I will return to the castle and fetch it." "No need," Leon interrupted. "I've done some research into souls. This won't be troublesome." He traced a hand seal and cast a spell that resembled astral projection. Golden light, like sunlight, poured down on the Horcruxes. Thick black soul mist spilled up from the 3 objects, and the air filled with the wailing of trapped spirits as 3 skull-like forms tried to assemble. Leon altered the seal. The scattered energy flared even brighter, bathing the courtyard in a warm, brilliant glow. Under that light, the skull souls unraveled as if blown apart. Only a few fading moans lingered, then nothing of Voldemort's fragments remained. "Done." Leon pointed at the 3 now pristine artifacts. "The diadem, the locket, and the goblet have returned to their original forms. You can put them away." Leon had no real interest in Hogwarts' treasures. He'd sooner study something on the scale of an ancient winter casket capable of freezing a planet. In this world of magic, only items like the Time Turner and the Resurrection Stone seemed worth long study. Dumbledore held the 3 artifacts, still dazed. He'd never seen soul magic like that. "There are still 2 Horcruxes left," Leon said, tapping the goblet. It rang with a clear note that seemed to punctuate the truth. Dumbledore hesitated. He knew one remaining Horcrux was Harry. His options had been limited before. Destroying a Horcrux usually meant destroying its host. He had planned, as carefully as he could, to make Voldemort himself destroy the piece inside Harry, using clever arrangements and Lily's protection so Harry would survive. It had been cruel but necessary. Now, perhaps Leon's methods could solve the problem without such a sacrifice. There are still two, Leon repeated. One is with Voldemort, and the other is Harry Potter. Dumbledore nodded. I'll call Harry. Masters and students had spilled out into the courtyard and gathered at the castle gates, watching Dumbledore and the others in barely contained curiosity. Harry, come here, Dumbledore called. Harry, glasses slightly askew, was nudged forward by Ron and hurried up to them. Professor, he panted, stopping in front of Dumbledore. Dumbledore reached out and rested a hand on Harry's shoulder, his face folded with pain. Harry, while we have been searching for Horcruxes and ways to defeat Voldemort, there is something I ought to have told you. Professor, what is it? Harry's mouth tightened. He felt the cold prickle of dread. Harry, actually. Dumbledore closed his eyes. He loathed the truth he was about to speak. Wait, Leon said, stepping in and splitting them apart. Professor Dumbledore, what are you doing? Why the dramatics? I was explaining the situation to Harry, Dumbledore said, appearing innocent. Trust me, Harry will be fine. My magic is more reliable than my brother's character. Leon decided he'd had enough of the theatrical build-up. It looked exactly like the opening of a tragic coming-of-age scene, Dumbledore confessing, Harry collapsing into private despair, then, after a few days of solemn consolation, choosing to sacrifice himself and become a hero. Leon found the sentiment agreeable on screen, but the moment called for action. Without warning, he slapped Harry's forehead, and Harry's soul slipped out of his body, floating, bewildered, in the air. Then Leon plunged his hand into the drifting soul and drew out a malformed, infantile fragment, a splinter of soul twisted into something like a newborn without a nose. All right. He waved, and the extracted piece hovered between them as he sent Harry's soul back into his body. Harry fell forward, blinking back in his skin. Leon held the deformed fragment up for Dumbledore to see. See? It's Voldemort. Such a simple matter, and you two were getting all emotional. This? Your magic. Dumbledore sounded dazed, as if the world had shifted overnight. As the most prominent wizard in Britain for decades, he hadn't expected his practices to be so surpassed. He leaned closer to inspect the fragment, then nodded slowly. It is Tom, there's no doubt. Bolts of Balthak, bright, crackling energy, leapt from Leon's palm and crushed the soul fragment into nothing. Excellent. Now only Voldemort and the last Horcrux with him remain. Lord Leon, what do you intend to do? Dumbledore asked. You're not going to. It'll be exactly what you think, Leon said. To catch the thieves, first catch the king. We'll deal with Voldemort directly. Chapter 154, Voldemort's Death at the Hands of the Hulk. Since arriving in the world of Harry Potter, Leon had noticed something odd. This world had no world consciousness. Everything here obeyed only the universe's rules. Thinking it through, that made sense. A world consciousness should exist only in higher-level worlds. The biochemical crisis world being able to produce one had been a fluke among billions of worlds. He couldn't expect to find one everywhere. Without a world consciousness, Leon had to plan everything himself if he wanted to explore this magic system. He had no time to waste. If he wanted to leave Mordo and the others at Hogwarts to learn new magic, they first had to deal with the villain. Leon located Voldemort and, with his right hand, traced a circle in the air, invoking the mystic art of portals. The portal opened onto a gloomy castle hall. A few eerie blue lights hung from the walls like ghostly flames. Voldemort stood at the far end, a 12-foot-long serpent coiled at his feet. The Malfoys, mother and son, crouched nearby, terrified. Snape bowed his head, reporting to his master. The snake was Nagini, Voldemort's last Horcrux. It's Voldemort, Harry blurted instinctively. And Snape's there. He killed the professor and went to report back. Voldemort looked up at the sound. His gaze passed through the portal and first fell on Harry, then fixed on Dumbledore. Dumbledore! He exclaimed. Dumbledore stared back, calm but astonished. Tom, Voldemort, noseless and ghastly, paused. How are you still alive? His eyes blazed with fury. He turned to Snape. Severus, you said he was dead. Snape's steady expression cracked for the first time. How is that possible? He had watched Dumbledore die. He had killed him. Who was behind that golden gate now? He had questions, but Voldemort felt only rage. He had long suspected Snape, but he had never imagined Snape would lie about something as important as Dumbledore's death. Voldemort's mouth twisted, a forced smile crossing his pale, withered face. He tried to keep up a show of dignity. The Dark Lord and the Pure Bloods demanded it, but everyone could see the brutality beneath. So that Squidward is Voldemort? Honestly, he's uglier than I imagined, Tony said bluntly. Now that you mention it, he does look like Squidward, only without a nose, Leon added. Voldemort's false smile collapsed. His cold eyes swept over Leon and Tony and assessed them in an instant, but his immediate target was the white-bearded old man. Dumbledore, you've finally come to your death. He raised his wand and spoke the words with deliberate cruelty. Avada Kedavra. A green beam, thick as an arm, shot toward Dumbledore. Voldemort poured everything into it, expecting the old man to have only time to dodge. Instead, someone who had just mocked him stepped forward and struck the killing curse from bottom to top with an open palm. The beam disintegrated from its tip inward, collapsing like a water column severed by a blade. The disruption ran back to Voldemort's wand. A tremendous force wrenched his right arm. He stumbled as his wand snapped in two with a sharp crack. This is impossible, Voldemort cried, staring at his broken wand in rage. Leon, who had sent the counter, folded his hands together as if washing them clean. It felt like washing with pure water. Very refreshing, he said, unfazed. Your magic, mixing killing intent into an attack, has its own style. But your killing intent is weak. Practice another 2 years. His world master level willpower put him leagues ahead. Saying Voldemort's killing intent was weak wasn't hyperbole. Voldemort's gaze swung from the ruined wand to Leon's face. He wanted to speak, but his fury choked him. Dumbledore, Harry, and the rest watched in stunned silence, Dumbledore's beard almost hanging open in disbelief, Harry's look as if he were suddenly questioning everything. Leon didn't linger in shock. He thrust his hands forward and expanded the portal, sweeping it toward Voldemort and the others. The golden ring enveloped them and transported them out of the gloomy hall to the grounds outside Hogwarts before snapping shut. The abrupt change left Voldemort and Snape blinking in disbelief. Professor Dumbledore, seize the opportunity. Let me show you a little of Camartage's magic, Leon said casually, paying no heed to Dumbledore's reaction. Without warning, he pulled Banner over and with one palm pried Banner's human consciousness out and left the Hulk persona in control. Banner's body swelled, bursting his clothes as muscle and green skin took over. The creature towered 2 to 3 meters tall and roared to the sky. Hulk, he bellowed. Go, use Hulk smash, Leon ordered, pointing at Voldemort. Hulk, no! Banner's human side tried to resist. Hulk planted a fist in the ground as if half willing to hit Leon. Subconsciously, he knew punching Leon would bring trouble. Leon wasn't surprised. He turned back to Voldemort and shouted, Tom, you see this guy? We call him the Voldemort Terminator. You're dead today. Voldemort, still dazed by the sudden transfer outside Hogwarts, decided not to wait. Determined to end the fight, he unleashed a burst of flame and destructive magic at the Hulk. Fire erupted across the giant's body, making him stagger as flames licked his skin. The Hulk gave a roar and charged through the inferno. Without hesitation, he leaped at Voldemort and punched him into the ground. He grabbed the arm that clutched a broken wand, hoisted the Dark Lord, and slammed him down, again and again. The impact stung like the world itself trembling. He lifted and slammed him repeatedly. The blows came slow but brutal, each one landing with bone-jarring force. Voldemort's resistance dwindled from curses and painful spells to pleas for mercy, and finally to silence. For 2 or 3 minutes, the only sounds were the thuds of spanging flesh and the distant, shuddering gasps of onlookers. Hulk, feeling the primitive joy of crushing his enemy, kept going. No wonder that other man, the so-called Superman, liked bashing people so much. Isn't this a bit excessive? Banner's human consciousness floated beside Leon, horrified. Leon shrugged. What's wrong with it? From now on, this will be a signature technique of Camartage. Dumbledore watched, heart twitching. It was brutal beyond anything he'd seen. Your transfiguration is extraordinary, he blurted, assuming Leon had used it to enlarge Banner. Leon smiled faintly. Thank you, but it's a small trick. He waved his right hand and with his mental power drew Nagini over. Like before, he used both palms to snuff the fragments of Voldemort's soul trapped in the snake. That was the last Horcrux. The moment the Horcrux was destroyed, Voldemort, who had seemed inert under the Hulk's assault, gave one final piercing wail. Then, as if a fragile statue blown to dust, he disintegrated. He had been a meat paste after so many slams, and had it not been for the anchoring effect of his Horcruxes, he should have been dead long before. With every Horcrux gone, the last thread holding his soul together snapped, and his battered form crumbled into dust and blew away. Hulk? The green giant looked down at the spot where Voldemort had been, scratching his head in confusion. He peered at Leon. Hulk? Voldemort was dead. Just like that. You know who, the shadow that had loomed over the wizarding world for decades, was gone, smashed to dust by the sudden appearance of a giant green creature standing before them. Dumbledore, Harry, and the teachers and students gathered at the castle gate stood motionless. Everyone's faces were vacant. For a moment, the scene was so still it felt like waiting for a priest to step forward, raise a cenotaph for Voldemort, pronounce his death, and declare his sins buried with him. The evening wind howled across the lawn, turning robes into flowing capes. The crowd, swathed in black, resembled mourners at a funeral. It was almost comical. Voldemort had died, and Hogwarts seemed ready to hold the funeral. Only the mood wasn't sorrowful at all. Voldemort, is he really dead? A young wizard asked hesitantly, voice trembling with a mix of excitement and fear, worried that he was celebrating too soon. He's dead, probably. That big guy smashed him into dust, one of the Weasley twins said, arms slung around the other. But the prophecy, doesn't it say Harry should be the one to defeat him? Ron protested. Maybe Harry being involved counts as defeating him? None of the students dared declare it for certain. They had grown up with the name you-know-who, learning not to speak it in fear. Could such a figure really be slain so casually before their eyes? You guessed right. He's gone. Gone to dust, a voice said from the side. They turned to see Dumbledore. He had arrived at the gate through a golden portal sent by the Sorcerer Supreme. He smiled faintly. Go and see for yourselves. Witness his end, and don't forget to thank the hero. His name is Hulk. Hulk had been prowling the spot where the confrontation had happened, searching in circles and even overturning stones. He couldn't find the durable, hulking shape he'd smashed. Leon came over and said, gently, that Voldemort had already turned to dust. Hulk blinked. So weak, he grunted, dissatisfied, and his gaze snapped to Snape standing nearby. A cold sweat broke out on Snape's face. He took a quick step back and blurted, I'm on your side. Hulk made a low growl. He wasn't stupid. This man had been with Voldemort earlier. Before anything could happen, Leon reached out and stopped him. Hulk, don't always think destruction first. He patted Hulk's arm. Look, see what you did. You helped them. Hulk? Hulk peered where Leon pointed and saw a swarm of young wizards running toward him. Their cheers rose up like a hive of bees, small voices, excited, reverent. Uncertainty flickered across Hulk's face and he clenched his fists. Leon carefully pried his fingers open and stepped aside. The over 2-meter-tall green giant was suddenly surrounded by children. They babbled and chattered. One praised him, another gushed about how great his transfiguration was. Someone shouted that the blow that had finished Voldemort was the coolest thing they'd ever seen. Hulk didn't fully understand why they were grateful, but the brightness in their eyes reached him. He raised his hands, looking around in bewildered delight. For the first time, he was cautious, afraid of hurting these human children by accident. Hagrid squeezed into the crowd like a child himself and wrapped Hulk in a bear hug. Hulk stared. He'd never seen anyone taller than himself. In Hagrid's arms, he looked suddenly small and dwarf-like. Leon stood to the side and smiling addressed the floating soul of Banner near him. See? Hulk's a good soul, just like you. Tony added, matter-of-factly, they're the same soul, so they share something. He's your other side, Banner. Banner's face was a tangle of emotion. Every time Hulk had appeared before, Banner had blacked out and lost memory. He had never truly known the other half of himself. All Banner had seen on waking were ruined buildings and arrested notices, so he had assumed Hulk was a monster to be killed. Now, watching Hulk grin foolishly among laughing children, a different possibility crept in. Maybe Hulk's birth wasn't wholly terrible. Perhaps he needed to try communicating with him. Banner pursed his lips. Maybe you're right. I should try. Meanwhile, the professors had gathered around Snape and the Malfoys. They had intended to seize the three suspected Death Eaters right away, but after Dumbledore's explanation, their names were cleared. The Malfoys, mother and son, had suffered years of humiliation under Voldemort. They wept openly. Snape, already an undercover agent, seemed to feel his path of atonement completed. He stood in the wind, looking up, two clear tears tracing lines down his lined cheeks. Dumbledore led the teachers and students to Leon and the others to offer thanks and to express eager hope for future magical cooperation. Even the bewildered Hulk joined in the bows the crowd made toward Leon and the newcomers. That evening, the great hall blazed with light. Every long table groaned under House Elves' finest fare. Leon and the others were invited to the staff table. Hulk sat with the students. Young wizards kept handing him whole roasted chickens and watched, wide-eyed, as he devoured one in a single bite and leapt up in surprise. Soon there was a long, enthusiastic line of kids waiting for Hulk to accept their offerings. The new favorite game was Feed the Hulk. Hulk felt something he hadn't before, friends and delicious food. He was immensely happy. Banner's soul hovered nearby, muttering about how he couldn't eat anymore or he'd have a stomachache. Hulk's only reply was to swat Banner away with an impatient, giant palm. Chapter 156, Blood Potion Dinner at Hogwarts, was mostly British fare, but it wasn't limited to that. Anything the House Elves could make appeared on the tables. Leon ate comfortably enough until Dumbledore brought out cockroach cluster candies for dessert. "No way I'm eating that," he muttered. "I'd rather go to the library and read." As soon as the feast ended, Leon plunged into the Hogwarts library. 2 days passed. During that time, Dumbledore had contacted the Ministry of Magic, and with the Auror's help began dismantling the remaining Death Eater forces. Once Voldemort's leadership was gone, the Death Eaters fell apart almost instantly. With the cooperation of former Death Eaters like Snape and the Malfoys, most of the pureblood families who had pledged allegiance were arrested within those 2 days and sent to the Ministry to await trial, and likely Azkaban. Leon finished his reading and finally felt he understood the magic taught at Hogwarts well enough. He was about to find Dumbledore when Mordo and a few others stopped him. "Leon, you told us to communicate with the sorcerers here ourselves, but we can't communicate at all," Wong complained. Mordo added, "They're not like what we trained with. They cast spells using power inside their bodies. It's just a word and a flick of a wand. There's no learning process." Tony, arms crossed, said, "I noticed that too. You must have a way to teach us, right?" Banner rubbed his forehead. "I haven't had time to learn magic these past 2 days. Hulk keeps trying to come out and play with those little wizards." Leon patted Banner's shoulder. "Kids are like that. He'll calm down when he's tired. As for magic, I do have a way. Follow me." He led them to the potions classroom and moved to a cauldron. "At first I tried to use magic directly, and I failed," he admitted. "So I had Dumbledore demonstrate everything to me. I studied how the magical power in his body worked when he cast spells, then deduced the underlying mechanism." "What about us?" Mordo asked. "We don't have that kind of inborn magical power. You can't borrow power from other dimensions in this world," Leon said. "I've always used my own energy, but there's another way." He explained that the wizards of this world were similar to magical creatures. Some ancestors were born with natural magical ability. Over time, later wizards grew weaker and came to rely on spells and wands. Bloodline mattered. Even Muggle-born wizards today had an ancestor who was once a wizard. Without that bloodline, you couldn't awaken magical power. Then, Leon began brewing. He added rare magical creature materials, phoenix blood and feathers, dragon blood, and other exotic ingredients into the cauldron. "The bloodline factor is important," he said as he worked. "These materials contain old magical lineages. If you can integrate them into someone's body, you can awaken a high-quality magical talent." He used a technique he'd developed, a kind of potion acceleration derived from manipulating time's laws, and sped up the brewing. 10 minutes later, there were only about 10 milliliters of a finished potion. Leon filled a glass dropper and held it up. "This is what I call the bloodline potion. 1 milliliter can grant someone magical talent comparable to an ancient wizard." He passed the dropper around. Who wants to try first? Don't worry, I tested it myself. Leon had indeed tested it obsessively. He'd taken Dumbledore's Phoenix Fox as a source of material, and Fox had been plucked bald through the experiments. Leon had drunk the potion each time, then used gene primals to restrain and analyze the surge of energy until he learned to harmonize the materials. The experiments had been brutal on Fox. The bird now noticeably trembled whenever Leon entered the room. Still, the potion was a breakthrough in a world where magic hadn't seen real innovation for centuries. Dumbledore himself had tried a milliliter after Leon assured him of its safety. The surge of power in the headmaster's body was so intense it wrecked his office. Merlin, Dumbledore had cried in amazement. You are a second Merlin. For all the blood and feathers Fox has given, please give me the rest of that potion. Dumbledore had been clinging to the remaining 8 milliliters, reluctant to give any back. From the moment the potion was brewed, Leon's name carried weight. In the magical world, he had become comparable to Merlin. Leon shrugged. He considered it a matter of experience. Even more precious to him than the bloodline potion had been the spring water that had once restored Dumbledore, removed an abnormal curse, and made him look decades younger. The day after the feast, Dumbledore appeared with black hair, and it had startled McGonagall and the others. Back in the potions classroom, Leon spread his hands. The materials for this potion are extremely precious, and the brewing process is demanding. I had to use my gene primals constantly to harmonize the different magical bloodlines as they fused. At present, no one but me can reproduce it. He turned to Tony. But you might be able to research a modified, more universal version. Tony grinned. I'm very interested. I'll give it a shot. Tony stepped forward, took a milliliter, and swallowed it. Wait, are you leaving? He asked. Then a rush of magical power exploded out of him. Whoa, this is magic power? With his SS3 serum modifications and the bloodline potions effect, Tony had become a hybrid of tech and raw magical ability. Leon woke up a defensive biofield to protect the classroom furniture from the surge. Yes, over the next few days you'll feel uncontrolled power. Stay in and start learning magic right away. Mordo's jaw dropped. This potion can actually create magical power in a human body so simply, incredible. Wong wiped sweat from his brow. So we won't have to keep borrowing energy from dimensional beings? More or less, Leon said, but you'll have to understand the essence of spells. Casting is still a skill. Banner, hands clasped, asked, Can I drink it? My situation's a bit special. Of course, Leon said. In some parallel universes, even Hulk uses magic. He scanned Banner. Your blood assimilates changes well. Once the wizard bloodline's integrated, it'll become part of you. Don't worry. Tony, Mordo, Wang, and Banner all drank the bloodline potion. A few minutes later, each of them was releasing surges of magic and hurried to their dormitories to ride it out and start learning. Leon went to bid Dumbledore farewell. Leaving so soon? I still have candies I haven't shared, Dumbledore said, black hair and beard framing his face as he tried to persuade Leon to stay. I've learned all I can from you for now, Leon said, sitting opposite him. Besides, you can't teach me everything just yet. Why not stay on as a professor? Defense against the dark arts could use someone like you. Leon smirked. Are you trying to kill me, Dumbledore? I know those positions never last a year. That was a curse Tom Riddle cast, Dumbledore said with a laugh. Now he's gone. It's fine. Leon shook his head. No, thank you. Tony and the others will stay a while to continue learning. I'll trouble you to look after them. I will. Aren't you at least thinking of staying a few more days? Let me repay some of your kindnesses. How about giving me Fox? Leon answered lightly. Dumbledore chuckled. Lord Leon, I look forward to our next meeting, he said as he stood to see Leon out. And with that, Leon left the Harry Potter world. When Leon returned to Marvel, only 16 minutes had passed here. He stood on Kamartaj's training ground and checked his own condition and the items he'd brought back. In his inner world, the Time Stone and Space Stone, reduced to ordinary gems while he was in the Harry Potter world, had resumed functioning. The Time Turner he'd brought back, however, had lost its effect. Apparently, time devices from other worlds couldn't control Marvel's timeline. Even the Resurrection Stone was useless. Its power was to summon the spirits of the dead, letting them take a form between soul and phantom. But souls in Marvel were already under the jurisdiction of the Lord of Hell, or even death. You couldn't steal them back with a single stone. There were still a few other magical items that worked. The Elder Wand, one of the Deathly Hallows, was among them. The Elder Wand and the Resurrection Stone had been Dumbledore's returning gifts after the old king had sent a magical artifact as a welcome present. Dumbledore couldn't find anything of equal value, so he'd handed all 3 Deathly Hallows over to Camartage. Even so, the items weren't much use to Leon. He packed all the magical artifacts into a suitcase charmed with an undetectable extension and planned to leave them with Mordo when they returned. Then he activated his dimensional travel ability again, locking onto a point 6 months later in the Harry Potter world, and left. A few seconds later, he reappeared on the training ground with 4 figures in wizard robes at his side. "We're finally back," Wong said, hands on his hips. "Even though only half a year passed here, it feels like I lived a lifetime." "You all had a good time then?" Leon asked with a faint smile. 6 months ago, the professors at Hogwarts had opened a special exchange program for Tony and the others to thank them for helping deal with Voldemort. Though it was called an exchange class, it was really a crash course. The Ministry of Magic had arranged a condensed curriculum that packed 5 years' worth of young wizard training into 6 months, and then held a special graduation exam. The 4 had been kept busy from morning to night. The payoff was enormous. In just 6 months, they'd learned what normally took years. When the exam results came in, Tony and Banner had grades of outstanding across the board on their OWLs. Wang and Mordo, both veteran mages who'd worked tirelessly, received mostly exceeds expectations and acceptable marks. But in potions and divination, they only managed acceptable A. Leon could picture the expression on their faces when they compared scores with Tony and Banner. For 6 months, Wong and Mordo had practically camped out in professors' offices, staying late into the night to catch up. Tony, on the other hand, spent most of his free time on transfiguration and heirloom potions, casually attending other classes. Banner had been obsessed with magical creatures, constantly leaving the castle to observe them. One professor even told a story about Banner transforming into the Hulk and tangling with several Graphorns in the southern mountains. After that fight, the Graphorns' habitat was ruined and the beasts vanished. Tony and Banner clearly hadn't been straining themselves the way Wang and Mordo had, but their report cards showed straight O's. "Don't bring it up." Wang and Mordo fell silent at Leon's question. They both sighed. "If we had to do it again, we wouldn't go to Hogwarts," they said. Of course, they wouldn't actually give up the chance to learn new magic. But compressing 5 years into 6 months felt like military training. Both of them were exhausted. "I skipped high school back in China," Wang said. "This felt like making up for it." Tony shrugged, smiling. "I thought it was easy. Hogwarts' atmosphere reminded me of my PhD days at Cambridge." He paused, tilting his head back. "Back then, the skirts were short, and you could see the girls' legs reflected in the lake. Hogwarts is kind of the same. If the students weren't so young, I'd have plenty to chat about." Wong rolled his eyes. "We only saw one woman in 6 months, Professor McGonagall. There were also Professors Trelawney and Sprout," Mordo added without expression. Maybe Wong just noticed McGonagall more. The others chorused, "Oh?" and looked at Wong together. "Only McGonagall? She is charming, but—" Leon let the sentence trail off. Wang's face flushed. "I was just giving an example, okay? An example. Don't get any ideas." Banner grinned. "Professor McGonagall's an animagus. She can turn into a cat. I know some guys like Wong are more attracted to that type." "That explains it." The 4 of them burst out laughing, doubled over. "You guys," Wong sputtered, pointing at the laughing mass. He wasn't angry, just embarrassed, and his face reddened. "All right, knock it off," Leon said, holding up a hand. "If we keep teasing him, he might sneak into our rooms tonight and cast Avada Kedavra." Wong smirked. "You'd better be careful tonight." Leon squeezed Wong's shoulder. "Okay, tell me what you learned in the past 6 months. The challenge in 4 months still depends on you 4 performing well." "Only the 4 of us?" Mordo asked, puzzled. "Isn't it best of 5 matches? If there are 5 matches, but all 4 of you win, do we even need a 5th? Leon spread his hands. Banner raised a hand. "One question. The opponents are gods, right? We only learned some magic. Can we really beat gods? They're called gods, but they're long-lived beings far stronger than ordinary folk, Leon said. You have to believe in yourselves. You're all strong. He tapped Banner's chest with the back of his hand. Especially that big guy inside you, Banner. If he comes out, there's no one among Asgard's young generation who can beat you. Banner scratched his cheek. Still, if possible, I'd like to win using my own strength. Chapter 158, Anxious Tony. I collected some magical creatures while I was at Hogwarts, Banner said. Sounds like you had quite the haul. Leon tilted his head. Not bad. Banner raised the leather briefcase he was holding. Professor Dumbledore introduced me to an old wizard named Newt Scamander. He's a naturalist and taught me a lot about magical animals. This briefcase was a gift from him. Inside, it's enormous. Different environments, deserts, grasslands, wetlands. Over the last 6 months, I've been raising a bunch of magical creatures in there. Hulk and I both like them a lot, and they like us, well, except for a few, like Grafhorn and Arampant. They're a little scared of Hulk because he roughhoused with them and liked to grab their horns and ride them all day. Banner sounded sheepish. I should apologize. I meant to ask if I could bring them back first, but when we were leaving, Hulk wouldn't stop hugging Hagrid. He didn't want to come out, so I never actually had a chance to ask. Hulk really liked the young wizards and Hagrid. That half-giant probably felt to Hulk like a big brother. Leon waved off the apology. No need, but you mentioned so many creatures. Shouldn't we see them? Open the case. Banner brightened and opened the briefcase, letting them enter one by one. Climbing down from the opening led into a small wooden cabin. A ladder leaned up to the hatch. The cabin was simple, with a work table scattered with magical trinkets and double wooden doors. Tony stepped forward and pushed the doors open, and a vast moonlit grassland stretched out before them. A breeze bent the tall grass and revealed small animals hiding in the tufts. They had long necks and big, soft eyes, like adorable, smaller alpacas. Further off, skinny black creatures unfurled bone-like wings and drifted down from the sky. Nearby, several creatures with the front half of an eagle and the hindquarters of a horse rested, hippogriffs. Farther out, giant birds danced with thunder on mountain peaks, and enormous beasts roared from the forests. Magic is amazing, Banner said. This space is divided into habitats, not just different landscapes, but different weather as well. This moonlit grassland is mainly for mooncalves, nightmares, and hippogriffs. The sunlit regions farther on are the territories of thunderbirds, grafhorns, and smaller animals like nifflers and bowtruckles. Banner had Wong take out the enchanted broom Dumbledore had kindly given him. They climbed on and flew through the briefcase world, seeing more than 30 kinds of magical animals before reluctantly returning to Camartage. Leon gave a thumbs up. Banner, honestly, I think you could be a beast tamer. With so many magical animals helping you, beating an Asgardian could be within reach, Leon added. Besides, a beast tamer can still fight up close. If needed, you can always let Hulk handle it. Banner nodded. I will. This should be considered diplomacy between Earth and other civilizations, like the Olympics. Strong military power equals strong national power. Not the Olympics, Tony said, suddenly serious. It's a joint practical exercise. He leaned forward. The bodies of the Asgardians are their weapons, like our guns and munitions, so this challenge is a test of both sides' strength. He looked at Leon. Leon, having you start this challenge to grab the right to speak was brilliant. From Asgard's perspective, Earth is just a planet under their rule. It's time we made ourselves heard. Tell them Earth isn't the backwards place it used to be. Leontha felt the rush of Tony's intensity, infectious, if a little over the top. In truth, Leon had already dealt with the problem of status with Odin through force and a brief exchange in the spiritual realm. Odin had backed down. The challenge was more like a friendly sporting contest than a political summit. But Tony's eyes shone like a man who'd already decided victory was mandatory. So we have to win, Tony said. You said no Asgardian can beat Hulk. Then my Mark 8 can pretty much secure another victory. The rest of the lineup is you, Wong, and Mordo. We should be able to take at least one more match. No, we need to be cautious, Tony continued. I studied Transfiguration at Hogwarts for a long time. This time, I'm going to combine Transfiguration with my optical computer tech and build even stronger armor. He was already picturing schematics. Send me back first, Leon. There are only 4 months. I need to speed up. Leon opened his mouth to explain that there was no need to rush, that he had already made arrangements, but Tony cut him off. How can I not rush? The sooner I develop new armor, the better our chances. Send me back now. All right. Leon opened a portal and watched Tony walk in with a solemn, determined gait. A little pressure is good, Leon thought. It might motivate Tony to actually focus. Leon turned to Wong and Mordo. How did you two explain Odin to Tony? Why does he seem to be under a misconception? Wong pursed his lips and considered. I told him you had looked at Odin for a few seconds, and he yielded, and then I mentioned the Ancient One, and well, then the challenge followed. Leon groaned. With that version, it sounded like Odin had backed down out of respect for the Ancient One, rather than because Leon had forced the issue. Wong, you're a terrible storyteller. Next time, let Mordo tell it. He glanced at Mordo. By the way, did Tony only study transfiguration at Hogwarts? No, Mordo said. He also developed a universal version of the bloodline potion based on your initial work. Professor Tony used single magical animal ingredients to create a new formula that's workable. It's no longer as impossible to refine as the first version. Mordo spoke precisely, as always. But his potion has drawbacks. The boost in magical ability is limited, and it also imparts some physical traits of the magical animal. The Mooncalf potion will lengthen your neck and enlarge your eyes. The Zuwu potion gives you cat ears and a tail. Leon couldn't help but complain, so he put his personal tastes into the potion. That's hard to say, Mordo replied. But after he refined it, Professor Tony made the formula public. The month before we left, the Ministry of Magic awarded him the First-Class Order of Merlin. Professor Tony is a remarkable man, Mordo concluded. Leon nodded, surprised that Mordo would praise Tony so highly. It seemed Tony's charm had won him more people than Leon expected. And you two? Did you accomplish anything? Mordo and Wong exchanged a glance and fell silent. Their faces turned awkward. They looked like students about to face disappointed parents. We barely finished the Hogwarts curriculum, they admitted, heads bowed. Chapter 159. I am also excited. Leon couldn't help but laugh. Wong and Mordo looked genuinely crushed. They had crammed 5 years of curriculum into 6 months and already surpassed most wizards with their talent and foundations, except, inconveniently, 2 new students who were just that much better. Those 2 prodigies had turned the self-assured Wong and Mordo into withdrawn shadows. This is actually great, Leon said, trying to be encouraging. You both passed the ordinary wizard assessment after only half a year, and almost perfectly. That's incredible. When the ministry handed you your transcripts, their eyes nearly popped out, he went on. Look at Hogwarts. How many students still can't pass all their subjects after 5 years? Wang and Mordo's slumped faces finally softened at Leon's praise. Their low spirits weren't only because their confidence had been shaken. They worried about how Leon would see them now. A month ago, at Camartage, Leon had been a rank novice. They had been mages for years. Mordo had even considered mentoring him. Wang had thought this Superman was too brash and ignorant of magical taboos. Then in a month, Leon became the Sorcerer Supreme, so powerful he could outperform all the Camartage mages, and the 2 newcomers he'd brought along eclipsed them both. Mordo, especially proud by nature, felt his ego bruised to tatters. But we're still way behind Tony the Mage and the other one, Mordo admitted, a sting of inferiority in his voice. Why compare yourselves to them? One builds battlesuits and the other just thinks about raising magical animals, Leon protested, searching for angles to praise them. When it comes to passion for magic, you and Wong are the ones who matter. He squeezed their shoulders. Talent helps, but effort is the bigger part of success. Don't forget, you're my sleeping dragon and phoenix chick. I need both of you. You'll be in charge of popularizing the new magic system at Camartage. I trust you. Wong felt a strange unease at that phrase, but masked it with a firm grip on Leon's hand and a vigorous nod. Understood, he said. Mordo's eyes shone at the recognition, and he nodded too. I understand. Good, Leon said with a relieved smile. You two will co-lead the teaching from now on. Get me a proposal as soon as you can. He turned to Banner. Banner, you still need to learn soul magic, so stay here. If anything comes up, message me. I will, Banner said. Are you leaving Kamartaj? Leon didn't deny it. The Ancient One had said that after he became Sorcerer Supreme, his main task would be keeping the dimensional demon gods at bay. The day-to-day running of Kamartaj could fall to Wang and Mordo. Yes, I've got other matters to handle. He opened a portal. Kamartaj is in your hands. Do well. I believe in you. When his words faded, the portal closed. The training ground was empty under the moon. Wang fell silent for a moment, then, slightly late, asked, Mordo, do you feel like our workload's been growing since Leon became Sorcerer Supreme? Mordo frowned. More work just means he trusts us more. You planning to slack off? No, it's nothing. I must have been half asleep last night. Wang shook his head. Banner, overhearing, scratched his forehead and slipped quietly toward the dormitory. Watching the two of them, he had the feeling they'd talk all night and then pull an all-nighter working. Leon stepped out of a portal into the Stark Industries complex in Los Angeles and caught up with Pepper for a quick talk he hadn't had in a long time. Then he went back to his Brooklyn apartment. It was still afternoon in New York. Shirley was out, on summer vacation, and Natasha and Yelena were still at the site where Hulk and Tony had fought earlier. Leon pointed a finger and used magic to get the kitchen utensils to start dinner themselves. He'd picked up the trick from the house elves at Hogwarts. Those elves fed thousands of wizards daily and had perfected the art of using magic to cook. More than 2 hours later, Shirley burst through the door like a shot. The minute she saw him, she squealed and threw herself at him, hugging him tight and nuzzling his chest. I missed you so much, she cried. Natasha and Yelena followed, smiling. They had assumed Leon would be gone longer. They all ate together, chatting about everything from Leon's magical studies to Shirley's school plans. Shirley is going to middle school next semester, Natasha said, watching the dishes jump into the dishwasher. The girls' eyes lit up. Dishwashing magic never failed to fascinate. We're thinking about Midtown School of Science and Technology for junior high. It's in Queens, a bit far, but it had the best graduate outcomes nearby last year. Shirley likes it. But why not a private school? Leon asked. We feel public school will let her meet more people, Natasha replied, leaning her chin on her hand. Given her past, she should interact more with others. Okay, I agree, Leon said. You're enrolling at Columbia in half a month, right? Natasha asked. It's just a formality, but Pepper thinks college life is important. Leon shrugged. There isn't much for me to learn there. I won't fit in with the other students. So what's the plan? Yelena asked. Finish my credits and graduate as fast as possible. Leon smirked. Shake up the faculty a bit. After dinner, Yelena suggested a movie. 3 hours later, the superhero company's latest, Iron Man and Superman Origins, finished. Leon's mood had soured. He dropped Yelena, who was rubbing a scalp made tender by his playful grip, and scooped up Shirley. Come on, Shirley. Bedtime story, he said. That movie wasn't worth it. Yay! Tell me the Leon, the professional story. Shirley demanded, waving her hands. She'd heard it 7 times before, but of course Leon obliged. Half an hour later, Shirley was asleep. Leon closed his door and in the dark felt warm, moist breath on his face. A hand slid over his chest. You were gone so long, a sultry voice murmured. Seems Shirley couldn't settle tonight. It's been a month, the voice continued, the hand tracing familiar lines. She wanted more stories about mages. It's a reunion. What about me? Am I exciting to you? You're more than exciting, another voice replied, low and teasing. You're practically setting me on fire. Breaths entwined in the quiet room. The rhythm quickened, the soft sounds of closeness moving around the space. The door slammed open with a bang, and a voice called out bright and mischievous. Boss, how could you leave me behind? Actually, I'm very excited too, heh? Shit, Yelena, what are you doing? Hey, the house is going to collapse. Chapter 160, Special Brothers and Sisters. That night, Leon slipped back into his easy routine. The next morning at the table, Yelena and Shirley had their faces buried in their plates. The unlikely pair seemed to be competing to see who could make their cheeks bulge the most, their mouths puffed out like hamsters. It was just a simple breakfast of bread and eggs, but they ate as if it were a feast. Lion had already showered and sat beside Natasha, drying his hair. Anything new at the company? He asked casually. Natasha glanced at the holographic news in her hand, chewed a bite of bread, and said, Everything's normal, except the boss hasn't shown his face in a month. Lion missed the implication. That's great, then. He looked at Yelena. The girl's face froze. What about the superhero company? Don't tell me you've only been focused on that movie. Well, Yelena looked away guiltily. After all, there are only 2 superhero IPs in the company, so making a movie like this is actually… Lion raised an eyebrow. Try that again. Yelena jumped. It's all Tony Stark's fault, boss. He filmed the whole movie. Natasha slapped her forehead. Yelena, Lion's asking about things other than the movie. She sometimes didn't know what to do with her sister. Yelena was usually sharp, but around Lion her brain went single-threaded. Oh, Yelena crowed. Other development is going very well. She counted on her fingers. The company's market is global now. Annual merchandise revenue is estimated to exceed $30 billion. But we haven't signed any new heroes. There are only 2 so far. Speaking of which, shouldn't the Men in Black count as a superhero team? Can we sell Men in Black merch? $30 billion a year was roughly what Lion had expected. The reason their revenue was so high was that Superman and Iron Man merchandise had reached multiple global markets, and there were almost no counterfeit competitors. Without those conditions, even the most popular IP couldn't sell that much in a year. He thought of his previous life's Pokémon, hundreds of billions over decades, and how much higher it could have gone without market limits and piracy. Apart from the movie, you decide how to run the other parts, Lion said. I set up this company to fund the Men in Black so you'd be self-sufficient. Oh, I understand, boss. Yelena nodded like a pecking chick. Lion set his cup down. What about the Men in Black? Have you sent everyone abducted by Hydra back home? Most of them are already back with their families, Natasha replied, but her tone tightened. There's a small special group left. What do you mean? Lion asked. Some people abducted by Hydra were brainwashed to the point they identified with Hydra. If we let them go, they could become new Hydra seeds. But killing them would be too brutal. They were victims themselves. So we used Red Room deprogramming tech to undo the brainwashing. That group is gradually coming back to normal. After deprogramming and returning them to their homes, we'll keep them under observation for a long time. Lion sipped his milk. Well done. There was a pause. Natasha hesitated. But there are 2 siblings who weren't brainwashed. After being abducted, they actively joined Hydra. Lion's expression hardened. You mean there's something special about them? They're from Sokovia, Natasha said quietly. When they were 10, their parents were killed by missiles produced by Stark. After that, they survived in a war-torn country and joined Hydra to get revenge on Stark. Sokovia. Lion stopped chewing. 2 siblings whose parents died in Stark-made missile strikes and who'd willingly joined Hydra could only be Wanda and Pietro Maximoff. Did the Men in Black brainwash them? He asked, feeling a weight settle over him. Not yet. They're scheduled for tomorrow, Natasha said, biting her lip. They're actually very much like Yelena and us. They faced cruelty young. If you don't object, we were thinking of deprogramming them, then giving them some compensation. Lion considered for a few seconds, then shook his head. No brainwashing. They don't truly believe Hydra's ideology. They joined to use it to get revenge on me and Tony. You know them? Natasha blinked. Lion tapped his ear and shrugged. Overheard. Then release them from Men in Black custody, he ordered. Stark owes them. And arrange housing and IDs and give them $10 million each. No more. Too much will just make them suspicious. Are you sure? Natasha asked. Sure. The money comes out of my account. Lion drained his milk in one gulp. But tell them a few things. Tell them the missiles used in Sokovia were sold by Obadiah, the same man who tried to kill me and Tony months ago. He's the real culprit. Tell them Obadiah committed suicide out of guilt. And tell them this, Lion Stark is Superman. Natasha's face changed. You want them to know their true enemy is dead, so they'll give up? Exactly, Lion said. I'm the same age as those siblings. I was 10 when their parents died. I understand how they feel. I think they'll come to terms with it if they know the truth. Natasha nodded. I understand. After breakfast, she suited up in her armor and flew to the airborne fortress. Yelena took Shirley to the company. Lion stayed at home, standing at the living room window, watching the traffic below. He liked Wanda. Powerful, beautiful, possibly a romantic interest. It was just a pity that, in her heart, Stark was probably an utterly evil demon.